Welcome to the Grand Theft World Podcast. This is episode number 2. We record this live for a limited studio audience tonight. There's real people in the studio behind me. There's also a whole bunch of people here on the Zoom call. And then that Zoom call gets streamed out to Twitch and grandtheftworld.com/live if you want to watch it on an easy URL every week and you don't want to participate in the meeting. And what we're going to do tonight is we're going to go over the top hits of the news in the past week. Things that are produced by Liberty producers who talk about freedom in their work. They give good references. They're not corporately sponsored. They're not somebody who's out there just believing everything they hear. They add analysis, and more people should know about their fine work. That's why we showcase them here at grandtheftworld.com. And each week we take this. There's a greatest hits. There's more media produced every week than we could possibly even point to. So we try to do, here's the things that you really need to know, that after a week we can kind of see what has settled out of the mud and the fog of war, what remains important that you should have a chance to know about and possibly internalize, either in the sample form that we give you here or in the source and the references that are below the notes in the finished final produced episode. We always have notes and references and links to the actual artifacts and documents to which we are referring to through this show. Tonight, I have a document here that we can go through if things get slow, but I plan to do a separate presentation on this and maybe include highlights of it next week. And as far as I was going to say, is there open? I heard hissing. I didn't know if there was an open mic someplace out there. As far as moving tonight's agenda forward, there's a whole bunch of clips. There's a variety of clips. There's serious news clips. There's a couple comedy clips. We got to keep it lighthearted as we learn about these hard things in life and get our adulting on and rise to the responsibilities that we need to have freedom and liberty, not only now, but in the future. And then we'll have an intermission. There's a clip that we wanted to share. So there's an intermission to this that you can kind of listen in the background. You don't have to necessarily catch all of it. And then we'll, of course, have a strong ending to the show. So I would like to welcome the nearly 24 people participating live in this call, and then all the people watching on the Twitch stream and the grandtheftworld.com live stream. Also, I mentioned we have guests in the studio behind me. This is Studio B. This is the library studio. Studio A is where I do my lectures on Friday night, and I just wanted to say hi to my buddy Colin, who's running the switchboard over there. And he brought a guest with him. His name's Jonathan Johnson. He's a former state representative here in Connecticut. How you doing, guys? Can you hear me?
Can hear you loud and clear, buddy.
Hey, Rich, how's it going? Thanks for having us.
All right, cool. You guys continue to just chill out over there. They've got some drinks. They've got some ice. They can sit there and see the show kind of maybe for the first time, probably. I don't expect either one of them is familiar with the format or the quality of references or materials that we marshal. But it is a very much freedom-oriented activity. They are very much freedom-oriented and minded gentlemen. And so to have them next door, we'll maybe get some fresh comments so we don't have an echo chamber. I wanted to have some other people who aren't familiar with all the things we do here or in the autonomy course or all the extracurricular activities. It gives them a sample. Let's them see behind the curtain, as it were. All right, so tonight we got a whole bunch of clips to get through. And like I said, if we get to a place where we need to review a document or if this is relevant to any of the stories that we uncover tonight, we shall find out. But I don't know exactly what's going to play because I'm not the showrunner for this show tonight. Tyler Bloyer is the showrunner. Tyler, the first clip I think that you had on your list pertained to something that was just published this evening. And just when we thought that the election was going to calm down, that there's a vaccine, there's all these things, all this hope that we could ease up on these lockdowns for Christmas, and it doesn't seem like that's the way it's going to go. What clip do you have teed up first?
That's right. It's a clip here from Timcast, and audibles are fine and encouraged on this show. So if anybody has something they'd prefer to see or something comes up in the conversation and you want to have it pulled up, it might not be immediately, but we can get things queued up. So that's part of the show too. And Rich threw me this clip right before the show. So let me just turn a couple knobs here and we'll get it started.
Yeah, I'll provide a little cover while you're doing that real life production activity. And when the clip comes up, I'll just stop talking. There's several clips from Timcast this week. This is the first.
But it seems like they want the economy destroyed. I'm not actually accusing them of trying to purposefully doing this. They're just either so crazed or hysterical or paranoid. They're going to cause mass death. We've already heard from the UN. In the third world, people are going to starve to death. Around the world, 250 million, and we can expect it to get worse. Why would they be pushing this hysteria over and over again? Why would the media be saying we have to lock down when it clearly didn't work the first time? You know what's really funny? Somebody tweeted, they said, if masks work, then why don't they work? Meaning, we've all been wearing masks for months, and now another spike is hitting New York? How does that make sense? Things are getting worse. New York is locking down. Why? Didn't your lockdown work? Didn't wearing masks work? If it didn't work, then why do the same thing again? Because they don't care. They don't want to take responsibility for whatever's about to happen. Now, there is some good news. Not that it really matters, but Fauci says we're not going to get a national lockdown. Okay, that's a bit reassuring, but I got to admit, it's not like I trust Dr. Fauci. I mean, let's be real. Fauci's been wrong about so much. The craziest thing is how the left has torn this guy to shreds. I mean, they attacked Trump for repeating what Fauci told him to say, but you get it. Fauci would say things like, don't wear masks. He did. He really said it. And then Trump said, you don't have to wear masks. And then they were like, Trump's crazy. Then Fauci said, Trump did a great job. And Trump said, I'm doing a great job. And they said, Trump, how dare you say that? You're not doing a good job. They simultaneously say Fauci is the expert, but then act like Fauci is crazy. You know what it is? It's Trump derangement syndrome. Fauci said, don't wear masks. And then everyone said, don't wear masks. And then Trump was like, you don't got to wear masks. No, you do have to wear masks. And now they've flip-flopped. Because whatever Trump says, they do the opposite. But I digress. This is the narrative coming down now. Fauci says you won't get a lockdown nationwide. But the media tells you to do it anyway. The Atlantic. The end may be near for the pestilence that has haunted the world this year. Good news is arriving. And they go on to mention Pfizer and the vaccine. Our testing capacity has expanded, blah, blah, blah. The CDC has finally acknowledged that aerosol transmission happens and that ventilation is important. The initial bungled messaging and science around masks was unfortunate, but things have turned around. The CDC has even publicized how masks can help protect the wearer from infection, as well as lower the chances of onward transmission. The importance of clusters and super spreading is more widely appreciated, maybe partly because the highly publicized White House cluster. We have reasons to celebrate. But, and you knew there was a but, a devastating surge is now underway. And worse, we are entering this dreadful period without the kind of leadership or preparation we need. And with baseline numbers that will make it difficult to avoid a dramatic rise in hospitalizations, deaths, and potential long-term effects on survivors. Almost every day, America is breaking new records in confirmed cases. My friends, you must give up your rights. Quick, where's the Constitution? Burn it, because a pandemic is here. We all remember the famous quote from Patrick Henry. I think it was Patrick Henry. Give me liberty or give me death, unless, of course, there's a pandemic. And we all agreed, then we don't need liberty. That's right. Or maybe a national security threat. That's a good point. Maybe we've got terrorists. Give up your freedom.
So that's like an 11-minute report that Tim did, and that was the most apropos part. So I'm glad you were able to catch that part. The part where Tim is getting a refined appreciation for the structure of the Constitution and the origin of our rights. Because if you look at what these people were planning, like Gavin Newsom's been talking about the 2030 project. So basically in the next 10 years, people don't have the right to own property. You don't own property. You rent everything and everything's cool. So there's this whole argument that they're making and they're trying to transition that way. And I say, ding, ding, ding. The origin of all your rights is tied to the idea of property, that you own your own property, your body, and that you can own property in the world. And that's the origin of our rights. How do I know that? Because an autonomy graduate named Michael Badnarik, who I voted for, the last time I voted in 2004, that was the last time I voted for anything. He ran on the Libertarian ticket for United States president. And then he's also gone through this course. We published and produced his Constitution class, which you can get. And in that Constitution class, he tells you over and over again throughout the lectures, the origin of all of our rights come back to property rights. So if you don't believe in property rights and you think everything can be rented, let me tell you, somebody owns everything in the future. You just might not be one of the chosen people who are allowed to own things. Right? This is the future they're planning and they're talking about so boldly right in front of us, under our noses, and you're not going to get that from the Tim cast, even if you watch the whole 11 minutes of that, because while Tim is excellent at analyzing current events, he lacks that overall sense of there's a coherent narrative of history being unfolded with a ton of evidence that's relevant and substantial and verifiable and validatable for those who take time to look at it. And in the context of that big picture, that big frame, there are current events. And my argument is, and always has been as a forensic historian, that if you get to know the history, the current events are a lot easier to put in place and see where they're at in this phase of unfolding their plan, because they write it down. This document I have on my desk is one of the plans that they wrote down, but it's not time to hit it yet because we'll have to see if we have a story that runs into it or not. Next clip, we'll save Q&A. We'll have comments a couple times throughout the episode, but if we don't get it rolling, we got too many clips if we start opening up on such a sensitive issue such as masks. But I will say that there have been a number of autonomy students and graduates that have practiced their presentation skills, because there's an exercise we do where you have to talk about a taboo topic. You have to talk about something that is challenging to talk to your friends, neighbors, loved ones, co-workers, anyone you encounter about those topics. And the mask issue is one that I've seen several presentations where people have marshaled the relevant resources in an attempt to build that bridge of compassion and constructive education through a dialoguing form. Learning how to talk to people is an essential skill set, but we are going to move on to the next essential skill set, making people laugh a little bit while they're learning something substantial. That's a good mix. Tyler, what's the next clip you got on deck? And did I guess correctly?
Triple muted. Yeah, we got JP Sears, who is been killing it lately, doing some good stuff on YouTube, making light of things while still kind of exposing people's cognitive dissonance and just overall silliness about some of the things that they do and behave because they're told, or because it's kind of what the society's doing. I think he's really doing a good job at juxtaposing that. Hey, Tim, how's it going? Should we go to the clip?
And Tyler, you don't have to triple mute. Single mute's fine. And then hit your video button when you get a chance.
If there was fraud in the vote count and it's discovered in the recount, then if President Trump proves to have the deciding number of votes in truth, then he'll be awarded with the election win. However, if there was fraud in voting in these states and a recount is ordered, but the fraud was in illegal ballots being dropped off and not in the actual vote count, then a recount will result in the same fraudulent vote count, and Joe Biden will be your next president. But the Trump campaign's lawsuits are unlikely to be successful because providing provable factual evidence of voting fraud would be very difficult. So recounts might not even be granted in some states. It is worth noting, though, that Georgia's Secretary of State has already ordered a recount. Georgia's 16 electoral votes that originally went to Biden could be awarded to Trump, which would not change the election results because it still wouldn't give him the 270 votes that are necessary. So Joe Biden would continue to be your next president of the US. Unless, of course, the US Supreme Court decides in the Pennsylvania case that sits in front of it that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court that allowed late arriving ballots to be counted violated the US Constitution. In that case, those votes would be thrown out. And if it's enough to swing it into Trump's favor, then Pennsylvania's 20 electoral votes would be awarded to Trump. And Biden would still win the election, because those 20 votes still wouldn't be enough to give Trump the win. But they would be when combined with Georgia's 16 electoral votes if that recount lands in Trump's favor. But remember, only if highly controversial Nevada is overturned and given to Trump as well. But he wouldn't need Nevada if the wild card of Arizona that was called suspiciously early for Biden ends up going to him after all the votes are counted and recounted. Pretty straightforward, right? But of course, with today's election results being official, it doesn't mean they're certified. If the results aren't certified by the inauguration deadline in January, then Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi becomes president. However, it's very unlikely that the election results won't be certified by then. But then again, with all the lawsuits being filed by the Trump campaign, not to mention any countersuits filed by the Biden campaign if any of the results are overturned, it's fair to say the election results stand a decent chance of not being certified by the deadline in January. And then Nancy Pelosi would indeed be the next president of the United States. But if that doesn't happen, when it's all said and done, after all the recounts are in, if Trump and Biden end up tied with 269 certified electoral votes each, then the newly elected House will select the next president. and the Senate will select the vice president out of the 3 leading candidates. If that were to happen, then the Democrat-controlled House would pick Joe Biden to be the next president, and the Senate's pick for vice president would likely be President Trump. Seriously. And then if President Biden were to die, then President Trump would be the next president. However, assuming Biden keeps the election win through the inauguration in January and becomes the president, then shortly after taking office, Kamala Harris becomes the next president, when Biden shockingly becomes unfit for service. You might remember Kamala Harris. In the recent election, she ran for president under the pseudonym Joe Biden. There you have it. The 2020 election is officially done. You can put your mind at ease with all this clarity. It's now safe to remember to be scared of COVID again.
Have a good laugh through all of this, because when you get to adding to the knowledge that you've accumulated, not just schooling and the indoctrination, when you're doing some additional knowledge, some learning for yourself, some self-education, if you don't get the sense of humor, it's a real downer, all these things. So people who can make us laugh about inserting facts here and here for people who are still open to thinking. People like JP Sears, like, he's been knocking it out of the park. I really never saw his work prior to COVID, I have to admit. And I remember seeing it come up a couple times in my YouTube algorithm, because he was advertising. He's got some marketing campaign going. He's a stand-up comedian. He tours. And I remember seeing this guy with long red hair, and there's just these weird pictures coming up. I'm like, who is this guy? But finally it was like, oh, it's comedy. And I checked it out, and I was like, this guy's funny. And then he kept doing that consistently. So he's a good example of someone who could have sat back and said, woe is me, we're all in quarantine and nothing I could do. Or he started looking at the situation and really making people laugh through it. There's a couple other comedians that have done similar things. There's a woman she's a comedian. She wrote a skit where her future self comes back, 6 months ahead in a pandemic, and starts informing her other self, like, no, you won't be doing that. And she's like, what about this? She's like, no, you'll be wanting to not to do that either. So these types of insertions of comedy into life, you can't just take in, if you just watch one of those news channels and that's like your intake for news, you're like rotting your brain, and you're denying yourself a lot of poignant perspectives that are purveyed out there by people who are liberty conscious, and they also know how to make content. They know how to express themselves and either provide value through entertainment or provide value through substance. This show's more about value for substance, in exchange for substance. But the clips that we're presenting you with are also people who are getting banned off of many, many channels out there. And some of them can't even get an Airbnb or use Amazon. That's how banned people are getting out there. They're losing the right to buy and sell because of perspectives of free speech that they've shared on the web that were not violent and not hate speech. So anyway, that's going on out there. We feature a lot of these people at grandtheftworld.com because there needs to be a platform where we don't have to search the far ends of the earth to find liberty-minded content that's getting banned from these major channels. Here's somebody up next who is demonetized for the past 7 months, but he still has an open channel on the YouTube. He's also got a couple other outposts like his Rockfin channel. I joined Rockfin. It's like a Patreon or another place where you can post your liberty-minded content. It's like Netflix. So I pay Jason $9 a month, but I get access to all the other content on that platform. ROKFIN is it's called. And you can open a free account just so you can see his work should he get deleted for covering news such as that which exists in this next clip.
As we work toward a safe and effective vaccine, we know the single most effective thing we can do to stop the spread of COVID is wear a mask. The head of the CDC warned this fall that for the foreseeable future, a mask remains the most potent weapon against the virus. Today's news does not...
The most potent weapon? Really? So it's not a good immune system. It's not making sure that you're not vitamin C and D deficient. It's not making sure that if you do have this virus and you do have pre-existing conditions, that immediately you might want to get on the authoritative drugs of remdesivir and dextromethasone. Right? Well, let's not talk about HCQ and zinc and zithromax. You cannot say that because they are not authoritative. But a mask is the way to do it. It's not a good immune system. It's not being deficient in vitamins. Okay. Thanks, Joe.
Change that urgent reality. I won't be president until January 20th. But my message today is to everyone is this. It doesn't matter who you voted for, whether you stood, where you stood before Election Day. It doesn't matter your party, your point of view. We can save tens of thousands of lives if everyone would just wear a mask for the next few months. Not Democrat or Republican lives, American lives. You know, maybe we'd save the life of a person who stocks the shelf at your local grocery store. Maybe it saves the life of a member of your place of worship. Maybe it saves the lives of one of
the place of worship you're not allowed to go to. Think about this guy. I mean, my goodness.
Your children's teachers. Maybe it saves your life. So please, I implore you, wear a mask. Do it for yourself. Do it for your neighbor. A mask is not a political statement, but it is a good way to start pulling the country together.
Mandatory masks, okay? Mandatory masks are the way to pull the country together. And by the way, it's not a political statement. I'm not a Republican, Joe. It's a human statement. It's a I'm not a virus statement. It's I want you to see me smile statement or see when I'm angry statement. I want my nieces to be able to see the reactions of people and not be scared to go embrace them as human beings. I want the era of handshaking to come back, not elbow bumping, not glove wearing, not your happy horse shit, Joe.
I want to be very clear. The goal of mask wearing is not to make your life less comfortable. It's to take something away from you.
No, it is. See, this is where I'm going to have to be harmful content. This is a transhumanist agenda. This is to take your very essence as a human being away from you, Joe. Okay? That's exactly what this is. It is dehumanization. It is getting you ready for an automation nation where you are just less important. It is a transhumanist agenda on every single level. Open your eyeballs.
Standing work on a consistent basis. He's outspoken. That's a good example of parrhesia right there. He's speaking unapologetically, or if you need an apology, he'll offer it to you, but he's still going to speak freely. That type of coverage during the week, like that's a much longer segment as well. And the whole clip is in the source notes, source references, links for this episode. Being able to look at that and say, wow, so it's going to be the new leprosy. Oh, you can't hug, can't touch. And even if they do have masks, you still can't. But those people, especially that don't wear masks, they're dangerous. They're like the crazy anti-vaxxers and these types of things, right? They are creating a schism in our society. They are dehumanizing one side, right? And both sides don't have to dehumanize. Just this side that's going to attack the other side has to dehumanize its enemy. That's a rule of public opinion. That's a rule of propaganda that we covered earlier today in the Q&A session. That's what they have to do. They have to first censor, and then they can relay the propaganda. The propaganda doesn't stand a chance when there's a whole bunch of media outlets calling bullshit on it. And now that they've censored those people out conveniently over the last 4 years, they can pretty much do whatever they want, and there is nobody left to say anything. You saw that they started out with, oh, we got to censor Alex Jones because he's a bad man and he needs to be censored from Facebook and YouTube and all the Google and all the Apple and all the platforms. Bad man. Sorry, knocking off my document cam with my enthusiasm. So, okay, so maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. Censorship, though, deplatforming as a rule, like as a method of complying with behavior, that's kind of sketchy, though, right? Well, now who are they banning? Right before the election meddling is censoring stories from the New York Post that Rupert Murdoch's lawyers went through with a fine-tooth comb to say, you can say this, but not this, and this might exist, but you can't say this. And instead of suing the New York Post, they said, we shall just censor it and not give people the opportunity to see the story or to make their own decision. They're saying, we don't trust you to make a decision. And this has not changed since 1921 when Bernays wrote Yeah, when Lippmann wrote Public Opinion, in 1928, when Bernays wrote Propaganda. Those two books right there, what they said in those two books is exactly how they're doing what they're doing today, as far as controlling the hearts, minds, behaviors, and actions, and influencing all of those through provision of false information that people cannot distinguish from the truth. They have no idea out there because they're not aware. They don't have the critical thinking capacity, the intellectual self-defense capacity to be able to make heads or tails. And so whatever the most professionally thing that they're seeing on TV that's out there is what they're going to believe. And in truth, people believe the best narrative. So if you, a researcher, can come up with an understanding and a narrative that supersedes their not so good story, you will provide value to people and they will interact and probably share more information. Hey, I found this out. Did you know this? And then it starts to grow organically based on evidence that exists in reality that we can sense with our five senses. As a, for instance, the document I have on my desk, it is something that is in reality. You can go to its source and find it. You can find that it has been published. It wasn't just published last year. It's something from the past. It's an artifact. It's an element of evidence that I wish to introduce at some point if we hit a story that comes across this type of idea. What's the what do we got up next? What's the next clip? I turned my phone off in the middle of that.
Let's see. We got any comments so far from the crowd, or anyone that's joined us in studio that wants to comment on the clips that have come in so far? Otherwise, we got
who's been taking notes and has something to say before we go on, so you don't lose your good
Rick,
points.
Can I say something about the last clip? If that's okay.
For sure. For sure. Thank you, Caleb. Caleb Hatfield, new autonomy student as of last week. This is his first introduction to everybody. So say hi. How you doing?
Hey,
Caleb?
everybody. Nice to meet you all. I just wanted to say about the whole, in that last clip, he was talking about dehumanizing people, the transhumanist agenda kind of thing. Like, I know that not everyone here is probably Christian, like I am, but I found that it's very important to reach out to the Christian community because they have numbers, they have organization that a lot of the liberty movement doesn't quite have yet. But the very principle of being in the image of God gives importance to humanity, and things like the mass really dehumanize people. So me not wearing a mask, I've always used the exemption of it's a religious exemption for me. I'm not looking to get into like a theological debate with people in my faith. And when you start dehumanizing people, you take that importance away from what it means to be human. It leads down very dangerous paths, and it always has in history. So you can look at the work of like his name's like Richard Weikart, I believe is his name. He talks a lot about in Nazi Germany how they dehumanized people and how certain factions of the church had to push back against it by arguing about the importance of the image of God, that humanity is important, it is special. And I think that's something that the church really needs to focus on. And yeah, I guess that's what I got for that.
All right, good job. Good job expressing yourself. I know it's new in front of a group and there's anxiety. So you did a really good job. You made strong points. The religious exemption, if somebody asked and it's not their right or business to ask you, but if they need to know, you probably don't want to bear false witness, and understanding that the piece of cloth that people are putting across it's not really effective, and it's live action role playing. So if you as a Christian don't want to participate in that, that's what I'd say. Are you asking me to participate and bear false witness? That gives them something to think about, and it's not the same thing they're hearing all day, right? To your other point, I'm going to give you this bonus. Dun, 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 dun. All right, first off, if I'm using the desk cam, the book cam, the show is sponsored by Autonomy. That's the opportunity to say that. All right, so this is the book you might want to check out. It's called Technocracy Rising, the Trojan Horses of Global Transformation by Patrick M. Wood, who is also a Christian author. So that's why I wanted to point it out to you. It's a fantastic book. I have many pages. See all those red marks? Those are all tabs in there of interest. I don't have time to dip into it right now, but what I can say is I have a YouTube interview with Patrick Wood on my Tragedy and Hope YouTube page, and it's probably about 3 hours, and we talk about everything in the book. So instead of trying to get the book and read it, watch the interview, see if you like it, get the book and read it, so you have a better, stronger understanding. But that's an author I thought you would relate to readily on that topic.
Yeah, I actually have watched that interview. I also know very major figures in the liberty movement actually are Christians. Most of them are Catholics actually, but like Tom Woods, Judge Napolitano, Ron Paul, all these people are of the Christian faith, and they don't speak on it very often. But I think if we're looking for numbers, which is I think what we really need if we want to maintain liberty in the future, I think it's very important that we reach out to some of these groups that have bigger numbers, and I think that our scripture and our faith actually really defends the concept of individual liberty. And it would be nice if, you know, some of these people were able to maybe start putting more emphasis on reaching out to those groups, I guess, just for the sake of growing the movement, I guess.
You can say for sure that the Christian community has been reached out in a negative way. If you look at the BioLogos Foundation, the head of the BioLogos Foundation basically came out in favor of all the lockdowns and all the masking policies. So this has been an active subversion since BioLogos came out several years ago. So yeah, you're right. People in that community need to be reaching out because it's already being subverted.
I think the smaller congregations are a better avenue. I mean, you got the Pope saying that he thinks everyone should get a coronavirus vaccine, which isn't good news. And then, I've actually had some Facebook commentary with a pastor in my local town who's pretty insulting and calls anybody that doesn't wear a mask like a savage, and they're endangering everybody. But I have spoken with some smaller congregation pastors who are very receptive, and they have literally said to me that what they're working on is like mark of the beast type stuff, and it's biblically it's pretty undeniable. So smaller congregations would be more receptive because they don't have the top down hierarchy, pulling the strings.
And that's true, but I've also been seeing, especially with the election right now, some bigger organizations that have big platforms are starting to kind of come around. They tend to lean right, conservative, more likely than not. But for instance, Apologia Studios, who has tens of thousands of subscribers and viewers, just came out with a sermon just the other day that it was titled "No King But Christ," and they talked about rejecting unjust governments. That's a big thing that I'm seeing in a lot of these communities that I follow, and it's like they don't have the philosophy quite nailed down when it comes to politics like a lot of people here do, and that's just, I guess, lack of exposure to maybe some of the philosophy that we've been exposed to. And I don't think they'd be against it if they were actually presented with it articulately, which is what we're kind of learning in this course, I guess. But just the thought of an avenue. And I know there's lots of bad actors out there and flawed ideologies, but
No, but I think it's an equal opportunity for people to practice the intellectual defense aspects of it, insofar as the other side is making claims. You heard Capo Cuomo saying, whatever is going to go on, and the question is, oh, you guys are interested in saving lives, because that's the claim. We're going to save thousands of lives, tens of thousands of lives, millions of lives, depending on who you listen to on the side of that argument, right? So the question is, oh, you guys are interested in saving lives, and you think masks are the best way to do it. Well, what about the millions of people from starvation and unemployment and all this other things that you're collapsing to address a problem that it's not really even addressing the 0.6% of people who do have the pre-existing conditions and for whom it's highly fatal? So the mask thing isn't about what they're saying it is. And this is almost to where I got to open this document. We're not quite there yet. But it is something that they foresaw all of this happening, and they had rules in place. So when it happened, they're just like, boom, we're going to make everybody's lives change. And one of it is to get you to do kind of arbitrary things to change your behavior. And it's the same way that if the Korean government was interrogating a prisoner of war and they wanted them to say bad things about the United States government, they wouldn't give them say a whole bunch of bad things about the government. They give them a thing where 90% of it's true, and they have to make one white lie and make their life easier bear false witness, and then they increase that as they keep taking steps through. They do the same thing. You can see it in a film like Daniel Day-Lewis in The Name of the Father, how British intelligence make them under torturous conditions admit to things that aren't true slowly over time. It's a method that they practice on people. So there's that, and that's a weapon that's being pointed at the public on a consistent basis. So these are all good points that are coming up. Is there any other points on the videos that we've played thus far before we move on?
Hey guys, yeah, I think I agree and I appreciate that, but I think, like, I had a conversation earlier. I think we need to keep some basic principles in mind too, of separation of church and state. Just because we can get lost down a road when people are there's so much of a distraction in those areas where I can appreciate that point of view. I think sometimes, part of my perspective is, I think getting back to those basic principles and maybe natural law is helpful. Or those other areas can be distracted if you just go for that's right. That's just a perspective.
No, it's a good perspective, and your mic's way overdriving, so I didn't want to jump on you for that. But that's cool. It won't happen again. Everyone else who jumped for your volume, it's going to be cool, and it happens. So don't worry.
I'd like to add something if you can hear me.
Yeah, Michael, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing, Richard?
Outstanding.
You may separate church and state, but you'll never separate religion and politics. And I'll add a thought for people that is the same thing I bring up over and over. The etheric, non-spatial, non-temporal, pre-universal universe is what people have stumblingly called God, and to consider that as food for thought.
Cool. Thanks for trying to wrap a definition about around a big concept like that.
All right, let me jump in, Rich. It's Mike. How you doing?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so I'm a financial psychologist, and I see things. I talk to clients all over the United States. At the end of the day, what I'm looking at, this seems like a big control. When I talk to doctors, that we should be quarantining elderly and compromised immune system. Everybody else should go about their day. The amount of money we could be saving globally, and even our country alone, just focusing on taking care of those people that can't go to work because they're compromised or elderly or need to be a little more cautious. It's killing us, and it's making people more dependent on the government. And I say this to clients, when they go to the zoo, it says, don't feed the animals. Why? Because the animals become dependent on you to do this and things for them. And I think that's really where everything's going right now. And that's a scary thought.
Yeah, I think all these things can only happen in the absence of self-reliance, in the absence of knowing how to articulate your value to the world, either as an employee or through your entrepreneurial endeavors as a business or through some other activity. Maybe you're an entertainer. But entertainers, as far as I know, they still have to pay rent and eat food and buy instruments and do these sort of things, recording sessions.
But you're stopping them all from being able to do their jobs because you're telling them what's right for them. They can't think for themselves.
These are good points to consider as we move forward. Hey, Tyler, the next clip we had up, it looked like it's right after the Zombie Joe. It's the Biden voter, and I wanted to make sure I provided context for this story because there's a Biden voter, and I think this is the story, who was like, she said, if I just knew that Biden was going to do this lockdown thing, I wouldn't have voted for him. And I was like, that's interesting because that's not just anybody who's making that statement. She's a Rhodes Scholar who went to Oxford and is on like the other side of this wall of the story where they get a very much more detailed and accurate version of it. And we, on the other side, we depend on legacy media or disparate, hungry freedom fighters who aren't that well funded. So even at the best intentions, we are not getting the highest quality information that we could be providing ourselves in the absence of legacy media not really giving us the value that they told us that they were giving us, right? So do you want to go ahead and roll that clip, and then I'll have more to say after that. But I just wanted to provide context that I'm pretty sure this is Dr. Naomi Wolf, and fact check me on this. Let's see if she's a Rhodes Scholar. Go ahead.
Now, I've got some other leftist stuff I want to show you. People already starting to realize, and many people who knew, Joe Biden is going to be really bad. So I want to give a round of applause to all the progressives who vote for the guy who they're now going to regret voting for when they realize what Democrats really are. But first, I give you this tweet from Dr. Naomi Wolf. I got to be honest, at first, I thought this was a joke. She said, if I'd known Biden was open to lockdowns, as he now states, which is something historically unprecedented, in any pandemic and a terrifying practice, one that won't ever end because elites love it, I would never have voted for him. Oh, here we go. You know what, man? Joe Biden's going to go blow up kids in the Middle East, and they're going to be like, if only we knew, we wouldn't have voted for him. We had 8 years of Joe Biden. Now, look, I'm willing to give the guy a chance, but I've been through this before with Obama the first time. Welcome to round 2, Joe Biden boogaloo. He's going to re-up our position re-up our military presence in the Middle East. He's going to bring us back to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. He's going to start eroding the middle class. I love how you get this guy who's been in office for 48 years or been public life, and they're like, let's re-elect this guy because more of the old. I love how, people are saying the American people voted for Joe Biden because they wanted something new. Joe Biden is the opposite of new. Trump is something new. Granted, Trump is boorish, so I can understand why people probably were like, not want to vote for that guy. But I do have some things I'll point out in that regard because, to be fair, there's no certified winner yet. While I think it's getting, every moment that goes by, I wait to see if Trump can pull out some kind of last-minute Hail Mary pass. It's very, very unlikely. And I think there's really good reasons to believe why people did vote for Joe Biden. That being said, there are some anomalies that need to be worked out. And if Trump and his supporters, you got 71 million, they want answers, you better give them answers, because we're not going to be able to function properly as a country if you just say, we refuse to investigate claims like sworn affidavits from poll watchers saying ballots that weren't supposed to be counted were being counted, things like that. All right. Anyway, Naomi Wolf says this, and I'll tell you what's really funny, okay? Joe Biden is in favor of lockdowns. We've always known he's been in favor of lockdowns. I now give you the breaking news from the New York Times. Pfizer's early data shows vaccine is more than 90% effective. Pfizer announced stunning early results from its coronavirus vaccine trial, cementing the lead in a frenzied global race that has unfolded at record-breaking speed. Now, We've known for a while. It's been said that Pfizer was going to try and have this before the end of the year. Donald Trump said we're going to have it, late October or whatever, getting everybody all excited there's going to be a vaccine just before the election. But it didn't come. The great and breaking news came just afterwards, about a week after the election, which is perfect timing.
It's a lot to unpack out of that, but I know it definitely escaped Tim in his reporting that the nature of Dr. Naomi Wolf saying that, is it because she didn't know what was going on? She didn't know the angle. She wasn't privy to the bigger story. Maybe, or maybe someone like her with great influence is there to say that, to set a bunch of people off, like, too late. You guys already all made your decision. You sent off your mail-in ballots before the Hunter Biden laptop was released and all this sort of stuff, right? Are they trying to stir something up? I think they haven't given up on their intra-national conflict, aka civil war. I think that's still going on. From what I saw last night, the violence in DC and some of these other cities where there's protests going on, and they're peaceful until a group shows up, and then people's heads start getting split open and people start getting sucker punched. And this is similar to the activities of gangs during the first American Civil War. The abolitionists, who were the people who were anti-slavery, they began to get extreme and do violence because the other side, the pro-slavery side, was doing all sorts of terroristic acts. And at one point, the abolitionist side reciprocated, and then that took on public fervor and it started to spread rumors. And then by the time the Civil War kicks off, it's like it's already been stoked. The fire is getting stoked. So as we see this build up outside, we have to learn to say, oh, what information is valid in this? And it's not conspiratorial to observe that shortly after the election, the Pfizer guys came out with this. And then you ask the question, did Biden meet with the Pfizer guys recently? And then you can find the answer to that. And you can find out more about how the sausage is made than you might care to know. But these things they're not accidental. That's the point. Did you have a question, Tyler? Yeah, I got an echo for a second. Does anyone have any comments on that recent clip?
I'm always going to get blamed for the technical problems, right?
Tim, we can make it an entertaining part of the show.
Tim Pool's got a pretty good song he produced called "We the People." That's an aside.
Yeah, I saw he released that. I saw it in the past couple weeks in my feed, but I hadn't watched it
pretty
yet. All right, good. I'll keep an eye out for that. Who else? Does anyone else here watch Tim Pool at all? Or maybe you got somebody better I can watch to check out.
He's got good play-by-play, but like you said, he's got a big blind spot, and he's mostly just like sourcing. He always is like, "Oh, I verified it. I fact-checked it. I double-crossed my T's and."
Yeah, he asks Microsoft. It's like
I know.
NewsGuard. It's a Microsoft company that he uses to check his facts. It's like, well, you can learn how facts are in reality and not let somebody else make those decisions for you. And you can do that based on evidence. Is it real?
Can I say one thing about the last thing that you said?
Yeah,
about,
Caleb, because you're catching on
Civil
fast to how this works.
I didn't want to speak out of turn. One thing about, Civil War and kind of sowing division with people, one of the main things I saw in the election that was kind of one of those light bulb moments for me that I kept bringing up to people was this whole, I think it was in Michigan when the polls closed, and like an hour later they get over 100,000 votes and it's all 100% for Biden, and you hear all these people talking about 100%, like that's, statistically impossible. And you look at it and you're like, yeah, it is. So you have to wonder if there is voter fraud, say, on either side, and it's 100%. If you're creating that fraud, you're not even trying. You're being very blatant with it, and you have to ask why. Because like as a kid, when you were in school, if you got the answer key to a test, you were smart enough usually to know that you had to mark a couple of questions wrong just to make it seem, valid. But with that, it was like, this is blatant. Like, why? And that's the only question I could ask is why would they want to be blatant like this? Oh, because now you have all these Trump people pissed off in the streets because it's blatantly, there's obviously election fraud happening.
That might be it. It might be that obvious. Or it could just be laziness. But has there ever been a Democratic election in this country that's been like on the take? Yeah, John Kennedy.
Yes.
His dad bribed people, mafia people specifically, pretty much in the same areas where that goes on. Like there's a strong Democratic mafia. There's this philosophy behind that Democratic Party. If you look back historically, they have a certain philosophy. I don't want to describe it as slavery, but that's kind of what they advocated. And then the Republican Party was created 1859-ish in New Hampshire as an abolitionist party. So when they have people convinced today that the Democrats, they're the party of color because they're traditionally the racist party, and the Republicans are traditionally the conservative party, was created as an abolitionist party right before the Civil War kicked off too, right before, right? And I didn't vote in the election, so I didn't support Trump or Biden because I don't like all the things that come along with the voting. I vote for either side, and I'm putting planes and bombs and dead people around the world. Like I'm not down with that. That's not where the steering wheel that we're making those decisions isn't connected to the linkage of the tires making the turns on the road. So I focus on those things that I can, absorb, and I focus on the people who are aware and care and listen and learn and look things up and grow and share with each other and do all these amazing things that you're seeing samples of during this meeting. But for us to just sit back and say, let them unfold their story. I'm sure it will be fair. I'm sure it will be freedom minded. I'm sure it will preserve our rights and freedom. No. That's our responsibility to do that for ourselves and not depend on other people to give us the permission and privilege and whatever they decide is good enough for us after they're done wringing the value out of their freedom. Any other comments on that clip before we go to the next one?
Hey, Rich.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Doing,
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. I don't know. I may have missed it if you said you had a clip coming up concerning that Pfizer report, the 90% efficacy. Did you say that you did?
I don't think we have one that goes into specifics. And what my memory recalls right now is like 100% efficacy would be like if only 7 people made it through the trial without needing a whole bunch of extra medical help, they would have thought that was it. And maybe they got 6 people out of 54 to not have some chain reaction from it, and they called that 90% effective. What's your understanding on it? Because I was just speaking off the top of my head and I did not have a reference prepared for that. What do you got?
Well, I'll probably butcher it, but I watched a clip, I think yesterday. It was something along the lines of 90 something people were 90 something people that tested positive for COVID, where I guess half or 40 to 60% were controlled, the other half were given the vaccine. So you're looking at probably somewhere around whatever that is, amount of people that make up this 90% efficacy.
The other thing to keep in mind with those studies, and this is how they run the studies in general. They don't give the control. There's no placebo. There's no placebo to balance out the equation. What they do is they give people, like if they're working on this year's flu vaccine, the placebo is last year's flu vaccine. They don't use clean placebos. It's not really what they're supposed to be doing in science, which is never settled and is not always agreed upon, but it is replicatable, and that's what makes it science.
Hey, giving somebody a saline solution as a placebo, that's unethical, Rich.
That's their excuse. They want to save lives.
Business Insider reports on November 11th that the Pfizer CEO, Albert Bourla, sold 62% of his stock in the company the same day the drug maker announced their COVID vaccine had been successful, the trials. So he sold $5.6 million on Monday. But it was predetermined trading that he adopted on August 19th. So that's pretty convenient. Same day that he announced to the world that he's selling, or they have a viable vaccine. But I think this is being set up to fail. I really think they're going to go with Moderna, but we'll see how it goes, I guess.
Well, Moderna's the one that Bill Gates has a strong
right. They're setting this
up
to like maybe they'll release this in a trial phase and they'll have too many reactions. So they'll say, oh, we have to pull it back or something.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mike, and then we'll go to Ted.
And Colin, I agree with you 100%. When you look at the two companies, right? Pfizer went up like $3, went to $40, and right back down to 38. Moderna has jumped because Fauci jumped right on top of that. I don't know, like 4 hours into the day. How Moderna is probably just as good as them, and their stock price has gone up probably close to 10%. So you're seeing the money moving into the Moderna, like Pfizer's getting ready to fail.
So don't sign up early for the vaccine. That's what we're hearing. Ted, what do you got?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, they're already walking back. They're, I found an article to find it and reposted in the autonomy group, but they're already saying that the side effects from the vaccine are making you sick with flu-like symptoms. So you basically can get a vaccine for a disease that most people have no symptoms of. It will give you symptoms of the disease or the flu. So they're already kind of walking back the expectations. So I agree about the speculation that it's being set up to fail, or it will fail.
And in either case, you're being set up. The world is being set up as an experimentation sandbox for these guys. They're no longer doing it in a lab. They've externalized what goes on in a lab to the real world. They're going to be doing human experimentation. I thought the Nazis gave that a bad name, and the Nuremberg trials and the legal lawsuits that went on said you can't do human experimentation anymore, right? They did it. It was horrific. Human rights violations, all sorts of immoralities, broken out there. And now we're doing it again. And it's an mRNA virus that mutates your RNA. It's the first time in history it's ever been done, but they're just going to roll it out to 20 million people a month. What do
you don't think it's shocking Cuomo doesn't want it?
I think he's waiting for his own brand. He's waiting for his own favorite brand to come around. Whoever funded Cuomo, one of those pharma companies, AstraZeneca probably, and one of these other ones funded Cuomo, and he's like, hey, I got to wait for my horse to come through.
Or possibly he knows that there's going to be an issue with Pfizer's.
Probably. He's on an inside track.
I know, that's my point.
He's a favored son of the globalists, for sure.
Right. So, like I said, you look at the two different companies, they're acting completely different. He's one of them who's against Trump, and he wants to block it for his whole state.
True that. Any other comments?
Hand it up.
Oh, wait. Any other comments on the table for this clip before we move on? Cool beans. Control room. Green light the next clip.
As an independent media organization, I think it's important for people to understand this, especially now more than ever. And I think because we talk about these important issues, it's one of the reasons why we are fully demonetized and literally rely on your support to keep us up and running. There's many very easy, convenient ways to support us on wearechange.org/donate. The link is down in the description below, and whether it is Venmo, the Cash App, Monero, Bitcoin, one-time donations, $5 a month donations, or even ways to support us without... Oh, man. I mean, these jokes literally write themselves.
I bought
It's
a hat.
hilarious. Some celebrations definitely got out of hand as a man was shot dead in Seattle. Other people celebrated by proudly virtue signaling their pronouns in their Twitter bios, which was essentially a big deal for a lot of people, as Kamala Harris announced that she is she, her. Wow, thanks for that handy guide there. I would have been totally lost. I would have been totally lost if we didn't have that. Comedian Tim Dillon, I think, had the perfect response to it by saying, quote, "My excuse," specifically talking about not having his pronouns in his Twitter bio, "is that, quote, I don't feel guilty for putting a bunch of people in jail, so I don't capitulate to online mobs who demand I make meaningless gestures. Thank you for asking." And he is absolutely right. Now, before we continue on with our regularly scheduled program, I wanted to remind everyone that the biggest and one of the most important things you could do is actually physically doing something. You vote every single day with your dollar, with your decisions, with your thoughts, with your values and actions, and that is far more important than just voting. Yes, voting is quick, it's easy, it's free, it absolves you of any responsibility, but does it fix the problem? Absolutely not. It's going to take hard work, dedication, and you as an individual taking responsibility for yourself in order to solve the problems. So yeah.
All right, so that's the first clip from Luke at wearechange.org. He is pitching the various ways you could support him, because I'm pretty sure he's demonetized too. He still has a platform, but he does have a store. He does have services. He's teaching a course up in New Hampshire right now on outdoorsiness and firearms safety and self-reliance and these types of things. So he's out there. I'm looking at the wrong camera. He's making moves. I wanted to go back so you can see the hat. He sells these hats. I got a nifty hat from his site. I got a couple T-shirts. I try to support people who I see trying hard, doing good work, consistently out there, and then getting the short shrift from the establishment. And I think it's a good way to support each other. It's not the only way we can support each other, but I try to pick up some swag from my various colleagues who have noteworthy thoughts that they want to put on a piece of clothing, or even the show logo for like Ripple Effect podcast and these sort of things. It's good to have those. I mean, what else are you wearing? It's a place you got free space. People are seeing it. They can't see your face anymore. So you can advertise on your mask, or you can advertise on your chest, get some free speech out there. The other aspect is Luke's out there. He used to do a lot of on-the-ground reporting around the world. If you're not familiar with Luke Rudowski's reporting, you should check it out. He was one of the first people to popularize confrontational media, sticking cameras and microphones in the faces of powerful people who otherwise never get asked hard questions, and otherwise you never find out what's going on. So like, he is confronted on film and got audio with Henry Kissinger and Jacob Rothschild and a whole bunch of globalists who aren't freedom lovers at all. For us, they basically are discriminating against our freedom. And he's brought them into like our world of saying, look, this is a real person. They're walking down the street. You can ask them questions. He's not always confrontational and argumentative, but he's always getting good nuggets of knowledge out of those types of reports. So if you're not familiar with him, he's one of 35 to 40 plus, and we're adding all the time, media producers listed on grandtheftworld.com. And, maybe one of the clips tonight inspires you to bring in a new information source into your world. And if you find that any of these sources are giving us, bad information, please bring it to the meeting, show us like the link and the evidence or whatever, because I'm not saying all these people are right all the time. I'm saying they consistently have shown good integrity and choices insofar as what they're stating relates to reality. And I think that's really the essential value that any type of news program, and this doesn't claim to be a news program, but if it was, it would purvey that type of value. And that's what we aim to do, even without giving ourselves that label. Any other comments or questions before we move on to the next clip?
Well, I'm not sure if that was the
That's okay.
correct that we picked out for Luke, but it was a good sample of Luke himself and
I worked with it.
type of media that you'll get over there with Luke, you know. And on deck, I think we have some more Tim. There's lots of Tim in the playlist. I think he's just been doing all kinds of media. What happened this week? There was a video that got taken down off YouTube. What occurred there?
Yeah, let's talk about that, though. We don't have to, like, because if there's a bunch of Tim in the list and we already covered Tim, let's make sure we shine a spotlight on all the other Liberty producers that we have in the lineup. There was a particularly interesting episode of Timcast this past week, and it involved in-studio guests, Alex Jones and Michael Malice. Michael Malice is quite an intellect. He's a scholarly author, but he's also got a rapier wit, which he jousts around on Twitter with. So it's kind of entertaining to see some of those the comments he makes during the week. And he was there. Michael Malice was basically on the podcast to work as translator for Alex Jones, who used to know the actual and factual, and now his ideas are more nebulous, and there's a lot more whiskey floating around. Let me get rid of the book cam so I don't knock that off again, because that would be funny. So Michael Malice was trying to say, look, that sounds crazy, but here's how to translate it into Tim speak, right? And he was doing a kind of good job, but they got off on some tangents, and there were some really valuable questions that were leveled by Tim to say, hey, who are these people? Who are they? And what are they all about? And those questions didn't get answered with a lot of conciseness. Tim also, he challenged the aspect of the child trafficking, and I think they threw out Bohemian Grove as one of the examples, and I have some plays from Bohemian Grove. So it's an official club. It's a real club. They have publications. You can get some of the older publications. I have one called Cristoforo Colombo. So they did a Christopher Columbus thing at one of the Bohemian Groves, like 1920 or something like that. So these are real places and real things go on, but it's not necessarily the best example for that type of content. So if you have a clip, so the bottom line is the show aired, many people watched it live, and then YouTube deep sixed it. And out of a 4-hour show, they won't tell Tim, here's what Alex did to violate our terms and conditions. And so Tim's afraid to upload it again. So it can only be found on the digital outskirts, the outposts like BitChute and DTube or Library, these types of places. I'm pretty sure Tim put it on his own account on BitChute. So these are floating around. It is gettable. It's just YouTube's not going to be the place you go for these types of content and pieces of information, artifacts, and evidence. And now these other
Tim is fully on BitChute.
There you go. You've been checking
Tim is
it out.
fully on BitChute.
That's the update. From Content Safe. Good job.
Content Safe subscription list has a bunch of content creators. Every time I try to find an authorized account, there may be a few there that aren't authorized, like DeBass. DeBass may not be an official channel, but it's got all this stuff there.
Right.
Anyway, am I going to do my assignment today later?
Yeah, you can do it after intermission. Once we get toward the home stretch, then it's easier to see how much time we have left and how many other pieces of news that were something we should cover. Don't get swept into the cutting room floor, as it were. Cool. As far as any clips, because there's a list that Tyler has, and we don't have to follow it exactly.
We got a clip with Alex Jones and Timcast that we could go to now, or we can go to Timcast talking about potential voting mishaps, and we don't want to throw around any strong words, but irregularities and conundrums happening.
Let's go to the first clip, and then I'll have my choice chooser thing that we can put into practice if we have to choose clips later. We have a game of chance here.
All right. It's always a game of chance here when we're using all the software that we're using right now. So we're going to do it live.
And here it goes.
Listen, there are extremist activists.
Alex Jones is more Alex Jones than I thought he was.
Yeah, he is. Listen, there are activists, there are extremists. There is a small group of them. And what I think happens is it has always been with, not with Jon Stewart, and then eventually you get these cookie cutter garbage versions of Jon Stewart.
Yeah, his children born out of wedlock, so to speak.
The cool place to be is the right is bad, the left is good. John Oliver mocking conservatives. So what ends up happening is you have these extremists, small percentage of the country, but a large number of people who bully and take advantage of this phenomenon.
That's what happened to Islam. Is that the more radical becomes, and the more radical becomes, it becomes an extremist.
What happens is most liberals are probably in a giant mob of people screaming, and they're scared, looking around at each other saying, I'm not going to stick my neck out because they'll cancel me next.
I think you're wrong. I don't think
wrong?
they're scared. I don't think they have an identity, and they only have an identity as part of a group. If they were in Iran, they would be hardcore jihadis. They're not scared.
No. I'm talking about the people who are scared. I'm talking about that there are people who are just
Let's
going
just say
with
this.
the mob.
You project your intelligence onto them.
Yeah.
They don't care. They want power. They want control.
You're talking about the extremists, the organizers, the activists, the full blown revolutionary communists, those that have taken the fact that there are many liberals too scared to speak out, and they just want to be accepted.
All I know is, Tim, they lie. They lie. I try to tell the truth. They make mistakes. They just keep saying, Jones wants to kill us. Jones is a Nazi. Jones, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm talking about DMTLs.
I'm going to
And they're like literally running around saying, I want to murder black people.
Well,
they're liars.
I'm going to talk about H.L. Mencken. Just one
What's that?
quote.
What's
H.L. Mencken, when the great journalist of all time, just 100 years ago said, the average man does not want to be free. He simply wants to be safe. And it is very effective for me if I do not have a strong will or strong position to just be part of the in-group as much as possible and go along, because then I know, like a school of fish, I'm not going to be picked out. So they're not scared of the left. They're just scared of being an individual.
Yes. Yeah.
That's
so
right.
so they're within the mob, and they're worried
That's why I'm
about.
joining it
Well,
right now.
I'm saying many of these people are scared that the mob will turn on them too.
I
I'm
don't
not saying
think
all
they
of
think
them.
in those terms because they don't think of themselves as someone who could. What is happening?
He's wearing a beanie.
Oh, okay.
Version.
He's
wearing
donned
he's
the
wearing a
beanie.
Okay, do I get
All right, so there's a bunch of points in there where Tim's incredulous and Malice has to stop him and say, no, that's true, but it's just not like exactly how he said. And then he has to interpret and go through adding details. And doing that over and over again, it just seems like it would be easier to have like some piece of reference that you can go to, because basically how it worked was I saw the information in like Research Gap, and there was Malice and Jones over here, and there's Tim over here, and they're trying to send packets over, and they're not being received by Tim. So it's like, what needs to happen for that bridge to be built? There's some common things, like Tim doesn't really understand eugenics and the history and the motivations of the people who sought to sterilize those who they consider to be lesser than them. That whole agenda, the Sovietization of our schooling system, and the Prussian education system that was the precursor to that Sovietization and indoctrination of our children in this country through schooling, which is no longer education because they took the free will out of it, and they took the part where you survive and thrive out of it, but they left the part in where you become a dependent cog in their machine who doesn't question what's going on and just wants to go along with the group, and that you're scared to be an individual, right? So Malice is well read on that stuff. Jones is well experienced, but no longer able to really articulate in great detail these sort of things. And Tim is left to say, I can't find the article, therefore it doesn't exist in my reality. And that's the thing. The reality is a lot bigger than you're accessing an internet that's been heavily censored at this point. So if you think something doesn't exist because you can't find the article, maybe you need to learn how to ask other people, find the source, be a better researcher, but not just say it doesn't exist because I can't find it. Right? The same thing goes on the Joe Rogan podcast. If young Jamie can't find the thing and it's NewsGuard, okay, it's not reality or can't be considered reality. And that's also very deleterious to freedom as it grows into the future. So the idea of having a platform where this information is not supposed to be an echo chamber, rather it's an attempt to put it out, and a fact check is put upon ourselves from internally to say, where's the document, where's the quote, where's the reference, because we need it for the notes for the show. At the very least, we want to have all that stuff, because my work for the past 15 years has had notes and references and links to everything I talk about, because I think the source materials I point to in any given show are more important and more relevant and more interesting than anything I produce. And what I'm producing is just attempts to be like, hey, look at this and look at this. And these are not disparate dots. They do formulate a big picture that you can't comprehend. Any questions or comments at this point? I wanted to make sure I keep opening the floor up regularly.
So the idea is, if you're sitting there with a notepad and pen and want to take notes and look up links and send them to me after the show so they can be published with the show notes, that makes our job easier. Because if you look right away when the show's posted, there may not be every reference, but the good thing about the internet and websites is that you can update them as time goes on. And so we can go in and add links that are missing. We can update things that are wrong. And I personally believe in bringing out mistakes live when they're big ones, if necessary, not like last week when I said the New York Times got censored off Twitter, but it was actually the New York Post, and maybe it's the other. So, not little things like that, little slip-ups that people can give you a leeway on. But if there's a big thing, I think it's important for us. We could have like a breaking news segment where we correct something live on air that was not exactly represented accurately.
Well, maybe amongst our group, but most people at large are not going to follow up. That's one of the problems with retractions. If you're going to retract or change something, it really has to be somehow visible, like the first segment of a show or something. It can't be like something you attach somewhere else.
And going forward in future weeks, I also want to mention all the things that we talk about. They are listed on grandtheftworld.com in chronological order. So that's easy. And then we're also going to have a sheet that has like the clips we're going to play, the references, and then I can also add in my references from the history blueprint, as well as the articles or whatever that might go along with those clips before we even talk about them. So that could all be there a lot earlier than it is, but we're still working this out. This is week 2. If we perfected it all, what will we have to do next week? Any other comments from the floor, from the gallery? If not, I think the clip we should roll next is the leaving YouTube party that I found to be particularly insightful. That clip has Dan Dix, James Corbett, the guy from Last American Vagabond, Ryan, and I think that might be all in that clip.
Yes, and it's here somewhere.
That's all right. The context for the clip, since I called an audible on that. So the context for the clip is some people are already kicked off YouTube, like Dan Dix got kicked off YouTube. I think Ryan from Last American Vagabond got kicked off YouTube. Corbett still has a channel. It's not monetized, but he's already set up his other platform, so he knows he can get canned by YouTube at any point. So they wanted to have a party. They wanted to make sure that people could go follow Dan's work at other sites and Ryan's work as well. And if I misspoke, it will be filled in by the correct information, because that's one thing that you can always depend on. James Corbett 4. Go ahead, you can roll it.
Woo! Yay! Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Goodbye YouTube party. And you will see I have my appropriate party hat. That is a happy birthday hat, because they don't have a Goodbye YouTube hat at the 100 yen store here in Japan, but close enough. I wanted to have one of those things that you blow on to make the noise. I don't even know what you call them, but they didn't have them at the 100 yen store either. As you can tell from the title of this video, this is a Goodbye YouTube party for some recently deplatformed friends of the Corbett Report. And the big irony of all of this is that I'm still on YouTube, so this is going to go on YouTube. So in case there are any people lost out there in YouTube land who still rely on YouTube for your news and information, this would be a good reminder not to do that. So we're going to introduce you, perhaps for the first time, hopefully not, but at any rate, reintroduce you to some people who have left the platform one way or another, and hopefully you will be able to find other non-YouTube ways of finding them. And as many people have pointed out to me recently, this is a good test, because I haven't been censored off of YouTube, so clearly I am a shill. But I guess clearly you guys are not shills. So why is the shill having the non-shills on his channel? I don't know. I don't know how any of this works. Anyway, let's get everybody on board and introduce everyone. And we're going to go around the table here. So let's start with Derek Bros. Derek, say hi.
Hey, what's up, guys?
And
thanks for having me on,
introduce
James.
yourself and your channel for people who don't know, or your platform more deeply.
Yep. So my name is Derek Bros. I've been on James's show quite a bit over the last years. I run the website, theconsciousresistance.com. I've been an independent journalist for the last 10 years, and I currently actually write for The Last American Vagabond, working with Ryan and Whitney Webb. And I've worked with nearly everybody in the independent media, from Ben Swan, obviously James, and old school people who've passed on like Jim Mars and others. So yeah, happy to be here. And I have been purged from YouTube in the last few weeks, joining the club.
Let me remind everyone, This is a party. We're not here to be somber and serious. We're here to have fun.
Okay,
Because this
I'm
is
ready to
not
party
a sad
then.
thing that we are being deplatformed from the controlled enemy weapons information system. That is a sign of success. I have not yet graduated to that level, but hopefully soon. But yes, this is a party. We are not sad about this. This is not a sign we're losing. It is the underlining of the fact that we are winning. So on that note, Josh.
That goes on for maybe 40 minutes, close to an hour. There's a lot of good content unfolded by James, and I forgot Derek Rose was at that call as well. See, a lot goes on during the week. Even though I saw these sample, I saw the entirety of all these. That's how we got the samples. There's a lot going on in the freedom community of people being jettisoned from these platforms. I think Derek Rose just lost his YouTube page like a week or two ago, and being able to have a personal media platform. What's that mean? It's a website. It could be yourname.com, yourbusiness.com. It could be a .net. It could be any number of URL suffixes, if that's even the proper plural. And once you have a website set up, then you can make your offer to the world. Then you can direct people to your offer. And that's how a lot of people do business out there. Like the people who are doing business on the internet have that infrastructure going. And the people who are struggling and kind of have an expensive hobby, they lack that infrastructure, or they're trying to do it on Facebook or YouTube or one of these other places where you don't have direct contact with your audience. Insofar as if you lost that platform, how do you get in contact with those people? So the various capacities that unfold from learning about, oh, there's a bunch of information that's valid dots that are not being offered to the public. And then you find out there's a lot of media producers who are actually providing those dots out there and doing the research and digging in. I just saw comedian Tim Dillon, who I'd like to add to the Grand Theft World crew on the site. Tim Dillon was interviewing Whitney Webb, and it's not his first interview with her. So even today, a comedian who has a podcast, he's interviewing Whitney Webb, who's a specialist on Jeffrey Epstein and all sorts of other research. And she's done several shows on Tim's podcast in the past. So it's becoming like less of a fringe thing and more of a necessary thing that people who think and care and are conscious about the world have to undertake to understand, because you can't listen to CNN or NBC or MSNBC or Fox or any of these places about Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself, or that whole situation, or the evidence that led up to it, or the bigger picture, because he was just a pimp. And who are his customers? Who are the people that provided those infrastructure situations for him to be in charge of them, right? They're still out there running huge multi-billion-dollar corporations that all of you are familiar with, some of these characters that are involved. If you've ever seen Victoria's Secret, like that guy is like the guy above Epstein. That woman that was in jail, Ghislaine Maxwell, I assume she's still in jail, though. Attorney General Barr laughed when they asked if she would be kept safe. He's like, yeah, we're going to keep her safe. Right? So that goes on. She's his handler. She's not an underling. She was like access to the royal family through Epstein, right? And as it was mentioned in an interview I caught earlier today, you remember Amy Roback from NBC or wherever, she had all the evidence. She was going to do a report on Epstein years before it broke, and they told her she couldn't do it. And then she blew the whistle and that tape leaked. What I'm saying is, to get the big picture, you have to go outside of the traditional purveyed cartoonish caricatures of reality that are purveyed by legacy media. And it involves you searching, viewing, clicking, reading, researching, typing in some more searches, verifying, validating, and then organizing that information and bringing it out to other people so that they can enrich their lives and get more toward liberty than the legacy media would ever like you to get, as far as that goes. Any comments, questions on the videos we've shown thus far, the clips, the fine media producers we've highlighted?
Can I ask one question about the whole Epstein thing?
Go.
Just to get your opinion on it. So when I was reading, so Epstein had an office at Harvard, correct? That nobody can really figure out exactly what that was all about. He had some connections from what I read about certain psychologists that were at the school. Do you think that maybe his funneling of children maybe wasn't just for sexual things with, high level politicians, but maybe there was something else going on too at the university level? Like it made me think of, I think it was John B. Watson. He was the father of behaviorism. I believe, and he used to talk about how he was interested in having like farms with children to figure out the difference between nature and nurture and the different races.
Yeah, Watson conducted the experiment known as the Little Albert experiment, and that's circa 1920-ish. And then there was a whole bunch of there's Pavlov, there's Watson, there's B.F. Skinner, and then there's all the stuff they did beyond that that's classified like through the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s to the present. And yeah, I do think there's something to it, and I can help explain how he had connections to some of these esteemed institutions. Is because he's working on the same goals that they have. He had a transhumanist future planned where he would artificially inseminate like hundreds of thousands of women so he could have like little Jeffrey Epsteins running all over the world. These are officially stated plans, like Wall Street Journal, New York Times. He's funded with Bill Gates. He's working with MIT. He's working with Harvard. He's in the establishment. He's close friends with Bill Clinton. He's known to Trump. They're known too. Clinton and Trump are friends. There's a lot of depth to. It's like if you watch pro wrestling and then you watch them all go out for beers afterwards. This is similar but different. It's very different what they do afterwards. But they're a clique of people with power, right? Now, even though Trump's like at that level, they don't like him. They don't like him at all. And because he has money, he's kind of like does his own thing and they can't control him and manipulate him very easily. So, yes, with the Epstein aspect, there's a heavy duty eugenics philosophy of might makes right and pragmatism and Fabian socialism, all these concepts that bring forth eugenics in the 20th century. They're all there. And that Epstein was a front man for that whole agenda, which is why he cut deals with Bill Gates and why Bill Gates went to visit him after Epstein was convicted of being a pedophile, as did Prince Andrew and all these other people who continue to do business because that's a known at their level. So did that answer your question, Caleb?
Yeah, I think so. I guess just for me, it was thinking for myself that maybe it's not just on the face level of what people think it was, that maybe it goes further into the whole social engineering. Maybe some of these kids that he was trafficking were used in different experiments to further understand the human mind, to propagandize us more and control us, I guess.
Just think about I don't know if I could validate this, but supposedly there was the temple on the island that they filled up with concrete before he got arrested. I mean, that's something I heard. So we could probably say maybe. If you catch my summary later, I'll say it's totally possible. I mean, it would fit. It's been done before.
Without speculation, there is some interesting evidence that you can check out if you want to see video footage of the Epstein Island, Little St. John. If you want to see it after he was arrested and before a lot of things were removed, there's a footage. It's put out by Luke Radowski of We Are Change. Also, Jeff Berwick is in that video. There's another gentleman who's in that video who remains to be named. He was on the boat. And what you see is the video of Jeff and Luke on the island, exploring around the island, giving a whole bunch of different perspectives, and then getting back on the boat because they got chased out of there. So that footage is out there. That is not on grandtheftworld.com because it showed up like last year. I think that was, we didn't have the site back then. So it's not like a time travel thing. But you can find that probably on Luke's page or certainly on YouTube. That's good footage to check out for sure. Any other comments about the recent clip? Ford, you're going to try your mic again? What do you think? I saw you were open for a second. All right, cool. Tyler, do we have an intermission set up for this festivity?
Yes, we do. We have.
What do we got, and how long is it?
I think we can go about 10 or 12 minutes or so, if that works. And it's a reading of some Bernays material this afternoon that you were providing to the class on autonomy. Is that right?
Oh, cool. So, yeah, right before the show, I called an audible and I said, hey, I said some things earlier today I would like you guys to know about because it's me taking directly from some primary source materials. It's very relevant and substantial information for what's going on outside right now. And yeah, I'm glad you were able to excise that clip. This is from the Autonomy Season 4, Week 8 Sunday question and answer session that we did earlier. The whole question and answer session was not like this, but this is just like one of the samples because you do get around to a lot of topics depending on who asks what. So this is a sample that came from earlier today. I'll be right back while I entertain you. To that end, I wanted to open, I have a reading for you guys because there's some stuff going on in the outside world. I just wanted to give you a little glimpse because I think sometimes I take for granted the things that I've learned over the years, and I assume because I said it once or twice or put it in a podcast, it's like everyone knows. And as that keeps coming back to me, like, no, they don't. You have to explain it to them. You have to bring out the document. You have to show them the thing. So I brought 2 books to class this morning, and I'm going to click over so you guys can see it full screen. This is Public Opinion by Walter Lippmann, and this is the first reading we're going to do. It's a shorter one. Then I'll get to the other one. This is not a first edition. This is a reprint. And let's see if we can get to the date. It says 2007. I believe it was first printed in 1928. But we can get to the facts in a minute. Here's the table of contents. The world outside and the pictures in our heads. And then I want to get to the quote. So this is part 2. Approaches to the world outside. Let me see if I can do this. You can see me and we can read at the same time. Without some form of censorship, propaganda in the strict sense of the word is impossible. In order to conduct a propaganda, there must be some barrier between the public and the event. Access to the real environment must be limited before anyone can create a pseudo environment that he thinks wise or desirable. For while people have access to, people who have direct access can misconceive what they see, no one else can decide how they shall misconceive it unless he can decide where they shall look and for what. The military censorship is the simplest form of barrier, but by no means is the most important because it is known to exist and therefore in certain measure agreed to and discounted. All right, so what is Mr. Lippmann saying in that clip? As far as you know, it's a clip because you just saw it through me reading. All right, in that paragraph, what is Mr. Lippmann writing? What is he saying? He's saying, hey, whoa. Before you can go propagandizing people, you have to have censorship, okay? And people know about national security, so it can't just be national security that's used as censorship. Now, since the 2016 election, specifically 1 week after that election, the leaked Google meeting of the executives of the people who direct most of the consciousness of planet Earth through their little algorithms, they were lamenting the presidential election. They said they would never let it happen again. They took measures to start censoring people who could tell people about the propaganda that they were going to put out in a couple years. So from 2016 forward, for the past 4 years, they've been blacklisting, deep sixing, censoring, demonetizing, deplatforming, and banning people across the board. I talked about this in 2017. It was enough of a trend that I did a public speech on it. I haven't done many public speeches. That was a topic of a public speech. I said, they are doing this. They're going to continue doing this. And once they do that, it clears the table and they can put anything on there and people will believe it. Because you take out the dissent, you take out the people who say and fact check for real, they can say anything. And that's what Lippmann put out. So this book right here, let me put it back on screen here. This book, Public Opinion, is a manual for psychological warfare to be used by robber barons and corporations and militaries and governments against the individuals, against you. So when Tim Pool asks Alex Jones, Alex, who is they? They are the people who follow this doctrine of sophism above truth. of lying to you to have a power differential, to gain power. They occult or hide information, and that gives them a power differential, which is a wealth differential, which is how they control the world. So I'm going to tell you who they are, and I'm going to tell you how they control you through media and how they censor so it clears the way so you don't see anything but their propaganda. And everyone around you who's not aware, who's not conscious, who's not asking questions, who's not using their five senses to validate their reality, they're under control, literally. So, I lost audio. It's not $1 billion studio. And look what we can do anyway. All right, this one. This is it right here. Propaganda. This is Eddie Bernays. This is also not a first edition, but let's break into it anyway and see what it says. 1928. So public opinion was written in 1921 because I know the two dates. I just always mix them up. Copyright 1928. Edward L. Bernays, renewed 1955 by Bernays, and then Mark Crispin Miller, who is a commentator and author. He republished this with his foreword, which I have to say, let me just show you the table of contents. We're going to start where they're organizing chaos, and we're not going to cover the new propaganda. We're going to hit the beginning and the end part so you can get the bookend on it and see why you might want to dip into this book. It doesn't take very long to read, and most people around you have read it. At least the people in power have read it. They use this. This is their manual. All right, so introduction. It's very interesting. It's lengthy. Not going to go over it here. Organizing chaos. And this is something I should make sure I read for every season, because if I send you out of this course and you don't know this, then you don't know much about how the world works. So let's dig into it. Chapter 1 of Propaganda, 1928 by Edward Bernays, Organizing Chaos. I don't want to write in this book, so I'm going to do it this way. The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. So he's not saying controlling people's minds is only what totalitarians and despots do. He says organizing other people's habits and their thoughts is part of democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. This is the logical result of the way in which our democratic society is organized. Vast numbers of human beings must cooperate in this manner if they are to live together as a smoothly functioning society. Our invisible governors are, in many cases, unaware of their identity, unaware of the identity of their fellow members in the inner cabinet, meaning they don't know who each other are. They're just doing their jobs because that's what they do. They do it for money and power. They govern us by their qualities of natural leadership, their ability to supply needed ideas, and by their key position in the social structure. Whatever the attitude one chooses toward this condition, it remains a fact that in almost every aspect of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, in our social conduct or our ethical thinking, we are dominated by the relatively small number of persons, a trifling fraction of our 120 million, that's how many people were in America back in 1928, who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind, who harness the old social forces and contrive new ways to bind and guide the world. It is not usually recognized how necessary these invisible governors are to our orderly functioning of our group life. In theory, every citizen may vote for whom he pleases. Our Constitution does not envisage political parties as a part of the mechanism of government, and its framers seem not to have pictured to themselves the existence in our national politics of anything like the modern political machine. But the American voters soon found that without organization and direction, their individual votes cast perhaps for hundreds or for dozens or hundreds of candidates would produce nothing but confusion. Invisible government in the shape of rudimentary political parties arose almost overnight. Ever since then, we have agreed, for the sake of simplicity and practicality, that party machines should narrow down the field of choice between to 2 candidates, or at most 3 or 4. In theory, every citizen makes up his mind on public questions and matters of private conduct. In practice, if all men had to study for themselves the abstruse economic, political, and ethical data involved in every question, they would find it impossible to come to a conclusion without anything. We have voluntarily agreed to let an invisible government sift the data and high spot, or to point out, the outstanding issue, so that our field of choice shall be narrowed to practical proportions. From our leaders and the media they use to reach the public, we accept the evidence and the demarcation of issues bearing upon public question. For some ethical teacher, be it a minister, a favorite essayist, or merely prevailing opinion, we accept a standardized code of social conduct to which we conform most of the time. In theory, everyone buys the best and the cheapest commodities offered in the market. In practice, if everyone went around pricing and chemically tasting before purchasing the dozens of soaps or fabrics or brands in which are for sale, economic life would be hopelessly jammed. So because they don't want things to be jammed up, they have to control your mind through these forms of propaganda. Now, let me also pick up this one piece that's back here at the end, because it is also apropos to our current real-time events going on outside this course. Page 73. Propaganda, like economics and sociology, can never be an exact science for the reason that its subject matter, like theirs, deals with human beings. So they're saying human beings are kind of hard to control. If you can influence the leaders, either with or without their conscious cooperation, you automatically influence the group which they sway. So you want to censor, you want to influence a big million, audience, person with million, you censor them. That also has sway. But men do not need to be actually gathered together in a public meeting or in a street riot to be subject to the influences of mass psychology, because man is by nature gregarious and he feels himself to be a member of the herd, even when he is alone in his room with the curtains drawn under quarantine. I'm sorry, I added that part. His mind retains the patterns which have been stamped on it by the group influence. A man sits in his office deciding what stocks to buy. He imagines, no doubt, that he is planning his purchases according to his own judgment. In actual fact, his judgment is a melange of impressions stamped on his mind by the outside influences which unconsciously control his thought. He buys a certain railroad stock because it was in the headlines yesterday, and hence it is one which comes most prominently to his mind, because he a pleasant recollection he has. That's what it's supposed to be. He has a pleasant recollection of a good dinner with on one of its fast trains, because it has a liberal labor policy, a reputation for honesty, because he has been told that J.P. Morgan owns some of its shares. Trotter and LeBon, two earlier propagandist authors teaching people how to do this, or at least in LeBon's case, pointing it out, concluded that the group mind does not think in the strict sense of the word. There's another typo. Look at that. We found 2 typos during that reading. Shame on you, Mark Crispin Miller. You need to hire us to proofread your documents. Let's see. Is there one more part to this? It just basically says people aren't thinking for themselves, not because they just haven't been taught how to think, not just because they've been schooled and indoctrinated, but because the source from which they think they get their clean water is providing them toxic information. People are going to media sources. We call them the legacy media now. They're going to media sources thinking they're getting the news they need to make decisions and choices in their lives, without understanding what that terrain is, that layer of legacy news that's out there is there specifically to disinform you according to their own rule books. There's many of these. Like, we can bring out Trotter and LeBon next time. There are many people who have written about how to use words and pictures and images to control people's minds through media. And we are not the originators of that. We are the discoverers of these artifacts and purveyors of this information back to the public. I doubt anyone knew that in 1928 except the people doing it against all of our grandparents. Okay, so this has been going on for a long time, but now we're at a point where they've dumbed down the public enough, where they've made the gap between what can be seen through our five senses and what is claimed in reality. It's a huge gap. They're polarizing people who are getting more and more extreme on both, like either side. I saw a live stream yesterday of a protest in Dallas because they were carrying guns. Whoever was live streaming or restreaming that, they got banned from YouTube because that violates the policy, right? But I also saw riots in DC and all these other places last night where there's like peaceful demonstrations intersected with paramilitary groups dressed in black, throwing bombs, doing all sorts of violence that's not going to be disavowed by the party that's about to be given power. So what I see is a powder keg and a bunch of people like sparking off matches and throwing them near it. And if we don't learn to be able to articulate what we're seeing to other people through a meeting like Autona Toasters helps you with your communication, or a Benny Wills course like Parrhesia that helps you strategically with your communication and these type of skills, or even just practicing in the role play in here and using specific instances that you bring from life. Like, hey, I had a coworker who said this. How can I position myself? So I'm Switzerland. I'm not going to aggress against you, but I'm definitely not going to take your shit because I'm Switzerland. Switzerland's like the quintessential place of don't tread here, don't tread on them, right? That's the international neutrality idea. Leonard Cohen, it's called Everybody Knows, and it was in the movie Pump Up the Volume, which was 91, 92. It was a Christian Slater movie about a kid who put together his own radio station, and there was things going on, and he was putting news out to the world. It was like a pirate radio station back in the day. And I remember seeing that film in the 90s thinking, if someday I had the need, that would be really cool to do. I wasn't like an extrovert, so I didn't have things of substance to say back then. But when it came around to reading the books and reading the documents, I got to a point where I needed to be able to express what I had learned to other people. And I taught myself how to do podcasting and filmmaking and later live streaming and how to write books and how to create courses and how to teach other people a systematic method of being successful if you can remove the noise and focus on the signal. And the signal here is that there's a group of people out there, they're on the other side of the legacy media. They know, everybody knows. And this is something that, to bring it back to an on the ground reporter like Tim Pool, or in this case Luke Rudowski, Luke knows. He's talked to the guys that went to cover Bilderberg. They went out for drinks afterwards, and Luke goes up to him and says, hey, what about real journalism? What about this? And those guys told him, and you can hear interview clips. I think he says it in an interview that I did with him maybe in 2013. And the way Luke recounts it is that these people said to Luke that he is the real journalism, that they, not so much on the take, but they don't have a choice. They live this lowly kind of position where they're getting a good paycheck maybe, but they're not allowed to think for themselves. They're not allowed to do real journalism, and it's not in the budget anyway anymore, because it used to be, to use the public airwaves, you had to have a certain segment set aside to inform the public of things which were going on, and then they turned that into for-profit models in the earlier part of the 21st century. Everything became for profit, so then it became a mouthpiece for the military, media, pharmaceutical, industrial complex. And that is a correct and accurate description of the not the secret government. What do they like to call it these days? The shadow government. The shadow government carries out what this layer that I'm describing says to do. Right. So there's a group of people that have enough clout, whose corporations have enough influence, that they have the shadow government of intelligence and politicians and lobbyists and nonprofit foundations. And then the layer we see are like the people LARPing every day for a living, the congressmen, the senators, the president, and all the people that are in that gallery of press with the artificially limited set of information that does not reflect the reality that we need to understand every day as mature, responsible, freedom-loving adults who want to instill the next generation with freedom and rights and privileges that we have all enjoyed in our lifetime that are all of a sudden going away. They went from innocent until proven guilty and would rather set 100 people, 99 guilty people free than put one innocent person in jail, to guilty until proven innocent by some arbitrary test that is not scientifically accurate and not scientifically founded. And yet we are going to base like our future on a few people who were not elected, who are not experts in their area, and who are censoring everybody else with a dissenting voice. That does not spell freedom and liberty for going forward in the world. And we could sit here and feel bad for ourselves and lament that and be like, that's a problem. But what we're doing right here is what needs to be done to bring it forward. We bring together the facts, the articles, we have open discussion, we bring new pieces of evidence in, we hear contradictory views and try to resolve those contradictions by looking for what evidence hasn't been discovered yet, or maybe which evidence has been misinterpreted or falsely purveyed as something that is not real, but in fact it actually is. So as we go through the rest of the clips in tonight's unfolding endeavor, it's important to keep in mind there is an overarching reason why we're doing all of this, and that's because freedom is better than slavery, and learning emboldens our freedom. And so the people participating tonight, for the most part, 99% of them are graduates and or students of the autonomy course, and that's how we're able to put on this broadcast, this podcast, this live streaming event. And I couldn't do it without all of their excellent help. And we can talk about that when we get toward the end of the episode. But right now, I wanted to check in with Studio A next door, right behind me here, and to see how Jonathan Johnson is doing on his first endeavor here on being exposed to some of these levels of information. I wanted to see if he's in studio. They might not even be back yet. Look, they're still outside, I think. They're outside enjoying fresh air. All right, so I'm going to now throw to the next clip. Let's go to the next clip, and then we'll go to the guests in the studio who are still refreshing their beers.
Here, and welcome to the Christy Gnome is a total boss live stream. If you're unfamiliar with Christy, I don't understand how at this point. This is the governor of South Dakota, and she has stood up against the mainstream media madness of COVID-19 84 better than anybody else out there. And that's why when I was making my escape from New York, I know a lot of you guys doubted me, didn't think it was going to happen, but as I plotted my escape, my end game was I don't need to go further than South Dakota. South Dakota, by all accounts at that point, if you were paying attention, had done the least regulations, seemed the most free, and if you watched my journey from New Hampshire all the way to South Dakota, you'll remember that I hit one of the parks there out in Sioux Falls, and no one was wearing masks, and people were living their lives. And yeah, the restrictions, as I told people, which were disturbing, were corporate restrictions. And that takes us into the story about Ticketmaster now floating the idea through the media that you're going to have a COVID vaccine card or a negative test in order to buy concert tickets. It's not just concerts, it's going to be sporting events too. There's so much to this, guys. All right, make no mistake about it. But one of the phenomena that we've seen during COVID-19 84 is what? Governors have been given a significant amount of power. I don't know that that happens under a Biden administration, but if you're paying attention, it is not yet a Biden administration, despite the fact the media is saying that and marginalizing, by the way, any evidence of any kind of voter fraud. Okay. In fact, remember, there was no voter fraud. Voter fraud doesn't exist, especially in this election. And then in a 24-hour cycle after that was said, it's now little evidence. And there's just fact check after fact check after fact check after fact check after fact check under everything. And Kristi Noem has come out in this interview with George Stephanopoulos from a few days ago and owned his ass. And it is so ironic that she comes right after Andrew Capo Cuomo. We'll show you the still of the changeover from Andrew Capo Cuomo. Remember, he's the tough guy that if he wasn't governor, he'd punch Trump. He would have decked him. He's the guy saying that Trump is now anti-Italian. Forget about the white nationalists and the neo-Nazi thing. Oh, no. Now he's anti-Italian on top of everything. Okay? And don't worry, George Stephanopoulos doesn't challenge the capo on anything like that, because George Stephanopoulos is an unabashed mainstream media Muppet puppet who is an outward political operative for the Democratic Party and has been for years, and was at the right hand of Bill Clinton during the Clinton years.
That was a really insightful clip. And if you guys aren't familiar with the fine research and daily work of Jason Bermas, I also wanted to mention on his YouTube page, which is Jason Bermas, Bermas. He has a section where he's done his films. He puts his films out there for free, so you can see him on YouTube right now. That might end in the near future if I have a chance to talk to him about that. So right now, bookmark his YouTube page. There's a film called Invisible Empire, The New World Order Defined. It's an excellent film. You'll get to know him and his research acumen through watching that film, but you'll also, more importantly, you'll see the people that are doing the thing today. You'll see them 10 years ago in history and what they were doing then. And what they were doing then was quietly building behind the scenes to give us what is unfolding right now. I'm pretty sure Joe Biden's in it. There's a whole bunch of great information that's unfolded in there. All his documentary films are excellent, and they are still for free on his YouTube page. So bookmark that for later. And as far as what he is talking about there is it's the unfolding of technocracy. Kristi Noem from South Dakota, she's the governor of South Dakota, has had a lot of freedom in her state, while some of the other states, so I'm guessing South Dakota voted for Trump because they're probably a red state with that type of freedom going on. A lot of the other Democratic states were in heavy, like totally contradictory activities at the same time. They're both trusting the CDC and the World Health Organization, these sort of things. But it's interesting how freedom and information trickles down in various states. And I almost think because the current system at any given time disenfranchises about 75% of the people in the population, that maybe there should be, if you live in a blue area, you can have Biden as president. If you live in a red area, you could have Trump as president. But I think that might be too limiting because then people would have to move. So maybe your president should be who you vote for. Maybe that should be going on. I'm not saying to change the Constitution or anything like that. I'm just saying maybe there's a better idea than how we're doing it. Or maybe we could just use the original documents in the nature that they are written, in the spirit that they are written, and adhere to them. And then by doing that, we'd find a lot of things that are acting as government that really aren't covered by that document and that system, that method that we're using heretofore to run a country on. Then we can get rid of those. And a lot of the problems would disappear as well when you have, the boundaries of the government defined by the Constitution, which was the government's, that's the document that gives the government power on behalf of we, the people. Our ignorance of that document allows them to do a whole bunch of things under the name of government, like tell us what to do that they're not allowed to do. As the Supreme Court rendered decisions for Pennsylvania and one of the other states, or Michigan, what they were doing was unconstitutional. So regardless of a pandemic or some type of virus, whether it be lab created or it came from bats going after pangolins and mixing together with some other animals. I don't know how that orgy worked, but that's the official story. Like regardless of what happened or to what degree, this is going to continue happening again. I'm pretty sure it's either Bruckheimer or Michael Bay is making a movie where it's COVID-23. You're still working on COVID-19, right? So they are already planning out the future scenarios for their technological development actively. They're doing that actively. That's also a hint to the document that's in this folder. They're doing that actively. They're unfolding it, and they're bringing it forward in a way that you have not seen yet in human history unfold the way it is unfolding right now. Any comments, questions before we move on to the next clip? The next news piece, the next news nugget. Anyone? Control room.
Well, yeah. I mean, just to back up what you were saying, Rich. I think that's, to me, the point is that we stepped over the line where there should be no way they could take away an individual's right to protect anybody in the future for anything. your rights right now are your inalienable rights. To say we're going to take that away to protect something in the future, whether it be health, whether it be terror, whatever it may be, seems to be a misstep. Sorry, I'm just going on what you're saying.
That's a valid point, and I'm bringing up Declaration of Human Rights. Do I have it in here? No,
Hey
I don't.
James,
I'm gonna
in
have
your
to. I'm gonna have to.
Zoom settings, if you can hit your mic down a little bit, it's not like it's poor quality. It's just really hot, and so the only way we can control that is in your Zoom settings. Just bring it down a little bit, and then come back to us and let us know how it sounds. We'll let you know.
Thank you, control room. And yeah, James, it's clear. It's really overdrive, and we'll be able to fix it in post production. But I apologize to everyone who's on the live stream. No big deal. All right, so it's good to hear loud things and soft things too. It's good balance. All right, so I was trying to bring it up in the history blueprint. I don't think I have the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights in there, but that's a crux of this matter, because I'll introduce this aspect. In the Wall Street Journal in 1992, the current president-elect, Joseph R. Biden Jr., he penned an article titled, How I Came to Love the New World Order. Now, as part of this article, How I Came to Love the New World Order by Joe Biden, he talks about the United Nations Charter, and the Declaration of Human Rights and these sort of things, and how maybe sometimes these ideas of collectivist, globalist government are more apropos for the Americans than we are educated to think. So he's taking a leadership position. He's putting this idea out there. And the disclosure should have been at the time. Joseph R. Biden is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, and all that comes with it, he is one of their scions, their next generation of leadership at that time. And as you see, now he's taking leadership for real. He's been trained. He's been bragging in front of that crowd of how he got the guy fired that questioned and was investigating his son to get the deal passed. And son of a bitch, they fired him, and then they got their $1 billion from him and Obama. There's a whole lot to that. We don't have time to break it down tonight. What we were on was the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. And since I don't have it in the history blueprint to bring it up on screen right now, I'll go from memory. The United Nations Declaration of Human Rights is a multi-page document, and when you get into what are your actual rights, it reads really well. Here's 1, here's 2, here's 3. This all looks really good. By the time you get down to number 29, specifically Part A, under 29A on the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, that charter, it says all the great things you just heard about can be taken away from you at any time should the United Nations not like what you say or do. So it's provisional rights, just like you come through schooling, the indoctrination with provisional self-esteem based on like whether or not they want to give it to you. That's your self-esteem, right? That's how we're indoctrinated. They want provisional rights. You're in good standing if your social credit score tells us good things, but if not, sorry, you just lost your rights. They also want you on provisional immune system. They want you on immunity by subscription. That's literally what they want. I would be surprised if they didn't use that word in their internal meetings someplace, because essentially your immune system's not good enough for you, and they care about you so much that they're like, we're going to add in our corporate untested products and we're going to put them in together and let them mingle in your body, because they do this with kids already on a grand scale, 60 to 72 injections over a short period of time that haven't been tested together, that haven't been tested against placebos, that don't go through the rigorous testing that even FDA does on drugs, because vaccines are a whole different thing and they're immune from being prosecuted. There's a whole bunch of interesting aspects that most people who think anti-vaxxers are crazy, like I'm not anti-vaccine. I think Louis Pasteur was a brilliant scientist, that what he brought to the table helped to save a lot of people, especially like the vaccine and the treatment for rabies. However, I don't trust so much these multi-billion-dollar international corporations that are exempt from laws, because they don't represent what a vaccine in concept is. They represent a chemical concoction that you inject unwittingly under your skin because you don't understand what's even in the ingredients, let alone ask for those ingredients. So there's a whole lot to that too. Try to say, well, that's this. Give them the benefit of the doubt and say, well, have you thought about this, or how did you resolve this contradiction? And just see if they're a thinker. Because if they're not a thinker, like, you can lead a man to knowledge, but you can't make them think. So if they're not looking for knowledge, don't purvey. But if they are, then maybe you have some good resources. Like, there used to be a good resource on YouTube called Del Bigtree. and he runs a show every Thursday called The High Wire. We should add him to grandtheftworld.com because he has been deep sixed and banned by YouTube and all these other platforms, but he still does his show, and we should be purveying that. What they also wiped out was thousands of videos of his where he's had brilliant source topic experts and guests that all got taken away. However, one of the participants in his call, Matt Raymer, I believe he backed up all of Dell's videos from YouTube before they got deep sixed. Is it possible that the future has those videos at their beck and call?
We can get them. Yeah, it's all there. It's all here.
So it's just a matter of redistribution, but they are on servers and they are saved. Whereas InfoWars, when Alex Jones lost his 35,000 videos from that platform over like a lifetime, it's just gone because I don't think they had them all backed up. So now that we're at least able to proactively, people can sign up to Content Safe to protect their data and their product and to also do distribution. But if we see somebody on the radar that's going to get deleted soon, we can proactively reach out, grab all their data from YouTube before YouTube just deletes it. And even that content creator can't access their data. Right, Matt?
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, I suspect that we could find everything that Alex Jones had done ever, because there was a very active distribution community on BitTorrent keeping all of his radio shows.
Oh, that's good. So, because I don't really care. I don't care about I don't like anyone getting censored. But my particular interest is not in preserving Alex Jones so much as he did so many excellent interviews with guests and researchers and whistleblowers over the year. All those interviews with John Taylor Gatto or Bill Binney or all these other people that were purveying truth through that platform, despite the commercials and all the other noise that's in there. They were putting signal out, and YouTube has done its best, and Google has done its best to obscure or delete the signal from people in the future so that they can tell a different narrative and have everyone believe it, because there won't be contradictory evidence anymore on the table to be considered.
We got the documents. We got the documents right now on the screen. Lawrence has got them up. We got the whole stack of them over here. Which right do you want to hear?
Let's go to Lawrence. Fact checking Lawrence.
Yeah, Richard, you were talking about Article 29, right?
Yes, I was. What do you got?
Okay, so
is my memory good or what happened? Let's see.
Looks pretty good. We've got Article 29 and then 3 sections. Number 1, everyone has duties to the community in which alone the free and full development of his personality is possible. Number 2, in the exercise of his rights and freedoms, everyone shall be subject only to such limitations as are determined by law solely for the purpose of securing due recognition and respect for the rights and freedoms of others, and of meeting the just requirements of morality, public order, and the general welfare in a democratic society. And number 3, these rights and freedoms may in no case be exercised contrary to the purposes and principles of the United Nations.
So I was wrong. I want to issue a correction, everybody. It was 29C, not 29A, where they reserve the right to take away your rights at any time. And you don't have party to say what the heck, because it's not local accountability. It's global United Nations accountability. And if you ask the question, who created the United Nations, for what purpose, and what does it do in the world, and how does it serve, and what's it really supposed to do? All this stuff is there for the taking. It's all right there. And it sounds really conspiratorial if I were to try to tell you that, but I encourage you guys to just try to answer those questions on your own and see what you come up with. Where did they get the land? Whose architect built it? What existed before it? Who founded it? Who were the early people who got United Nations ambassadorships? Like, while Nelson Rockefeller, I'm not giving any hints, Nelson Rockefeller was like the Latin American ambassador. He controlled the votes and the democracies in a territorial part of this world that's not the United Nations, or not the United States, right? So there's a whole bunch of interesting history that unfolds, but most of us think of the United Nations as seeing it on TV. Here's the blue helmets. They're going into this place in Africa. They're trying to defend. They're trying to keep people from fighting. They're a peacekeeping force. They're very neutral, all this stuff. That is called public relations. And we just heard about that in a clip during the intermission. It's like what you see on screen is not really what's going on. That's a truth that can be told over and over again in a variety of case studies and pieces of evidence and artifacts and whatnot. It is not hearsay. It is not subjective conjecture. It is not my opinion. It is there for the reading for those who are still literate and can ask the questions to get to those pieces and passages. I was just seeing if you guys had feedback on that before we roll to the next clip.
Isn't it? I found it fascinating that the World Health Organization.
The WHO?
The WHO?
I almost got you with that. That was my attempt as
you
a Michael
almost
Malice knock joke.
It's very interesting that they came out against lockdowns, and at least to me, it seems like that's a strategy. The strategy is you want to undermine confidence in local and national governments, and you just kind of do like, well, we're not advising this, but we're not going to say anything to stop them, really, other than just saying, no, you guys shouldn't be doing that. And if they roll out a vaccine and 100 million people die, they'll say, well, we had our concerns.
They died from COVID,
but
they already have a built-in answer to it, man. So the whole thing is you have to notice the patterns in history. Any place you see massive censorship, that is them preparing the ground for a game to be played called psychological warfare and propaganda, because they take out the opposition, right? It's like a pre-strike. It's like the Israelis taking out the Egyptian Air Force before they could even take off from their bases on the first day of the 6 Days War. Like, I remember when I was a kid, my dad was telling me, he's like, well, the Israelis had a really good military strategy. Before the other side could even know war was going on, they just destroyed the air power and any chance to, that's a superior strategy. You need to learn these things about how the world works. And as far as military strategy, juxtaposed to political strategy. So it's like Machiavelli and von Clausewitz. If you had to study two people, you put those two together, that's what they're using. That's the philosophy and rhetoric that they use to run the world. And the fact that Tim Pool can be there, I don't know if there's really people who are, they mustache twist and evil people. No, they write their books and they do their thing. They're just not twisting their mustaches and flaunting it at a lower intellectual level. They say things a certain way and they do things a certain way. And it is a barrier. Because with most people with an 8-second attention span, they don't have the ability to internalize or cognize what's going on in that bigger picture story. So
this is, I know I was beating up on Tim last week, but
you called him Tim Fool. I will stick up for him in his absence, because that's how it's supposed to be. Go ahead.
Let me say that one of the reasons I am so hard on him is because I see myself in him.
You have high expectations. He has really high aptitude too, and you see yourself in him too. Go ahead. Continue to elaborate, please.
Right. I could see myself 20 or 30 years ago being exactly the same mentality and, very not wanting to budge on that position because it didn't match with the way I perceive the world. And even though I had someone in my teenage years, my father, expressing the things you're saying, right? And I was like, respectful, but nah, Dad, I don't think that that's possible. I just don't think that they're that powerful. And that's where Tim's at. Tim is just smart, but it takes him, he just takes too much evidence to bring him to the point that he's willing to say it, because it just goes against his worldview.
All right, Tyler, since you did the time codes for the playlist for the rest of the night, can you give me a ballpark estimate? Because I want to know if I can unfold this document right now, because this is the type of thing that exactly what Matthew just said. Tim lacks familiarity with the details and certain elements and artifacts, and I have one that is particularly apropos to many stories that have already unfolded tonight, and I just need to know how much of it to unfold to make it real for you guys so that you can help bridge the gap with other people.
Yeah, let's go for it. I think that if we need to, we can fill in the blank with other clips, but we have about, 45 minutes left to go. Keep it in par with last week's episode. So there's plenty of room for banter and your document. So you've been teasing us all night. I'm excited to hear what you got there.
All right. This is me doing it live, because what you saw during intermission was me doing it earlier today. And so let's see. I got to get to this button. I got to move my tea over here, and it's hot, so let's not spill it. I shall remove the document from the folder. I shall place it on the table. We can now reveal it. This is a document. This is titled Scenarios for the Future of Technology and International Development. So it's not just the future of technology, it's also international development. They're going to mix the two together. They're going to merge these two topics together. This is the Rockefeller Foundation and the Global Business Network. I don't know who the Global Business Network is. I wanted the fact checkers to look it up, tell us a little bit about it after we get through this document real quick. But Rockefeller Foundation, notorious organization, nonprofit foundation, was cited in the Reese Committee of Un-American Activities by Nonprofit Foundations and the internationalization or communization of American. That's why they were un-American activities. They're trying to collectivize our individual rights and make us into a group that can be kind of parceled off and sold to the highest bidder, whether it be China or some other globalist entity. So the document exists. This is a printout from the Rockefeller Foundation website before they deleted it and made it harder to find. Okay. This report was produced by the Rockefeller Foundation and Global Business Network, May 2010. This is the table of contents. Why scenarios? So we are going to learn a bit about why they use scenarios, why they generate this document. We're also going to do engaging your imagination possibly, and we're definitely going to cover page 18. This is the Lockstep part of this document. A lot of people refer to this as the Rockefeller Lockstep document, though technically it is called Scenarios for the Future of Technology and International Development, which of course is not easy for average people to say, and thus most people don't talk about this. Let's just hit a couple points. Rockefeller Foundation since 1913 to promote the well-being. So these are good people. They're promoting well-being. Letter from Peter Schwartz, co-founder and chairman of the Global Business Network. Let me just dip into this real quickly for you. We are at a moment in history that is full of opportunity. Technology is poised to transform the lives of millions of people throughout the world, especially those who have had little to no access to the tools that can deliver sustainable improvements to their families and communities. From the farmers using mobile phones to buy and sell crops, to doctors remotely monitoring and treating influenza outbreaks in rural villages, technology is rapidly becoming more and more integral to the pace and progress of development. Continuing down, the Rockefeller Foundation's use of scenario planning to explore technology and international development has been both inspired and ambitious. Throughout my 40-plus year career as a scenario planner, so they're not new to this, I have worked with many of the world's leading companies, governments, foundations, and nonprofits, and I know firsthand the power of the approach. Scenario planning is a powerful tool precisely because the future is unpredictable and shaped by many interacting variables, which parenthetically they seek to control. I'm reading between the lines, but that's why I say parenthetically. Scenarios enable us to think creatively and rigorously about the different ways that these forces may interact while forcing us to challenge our own assumptions and what we believe or hope the future will be. Perhaps most importantly, scenarios give us a new shared language, like lockdowns and social distancing, parenthetically. That deepens our conversation about the future and how we can help to shape it. The Rockefeller Foundation has already used this project as an opportunity to clarify and advance the relationship between technology and development. Through interviews and the scenario workshops, they have engaged a diverse set of people from different geographies, disciplines, and sectors to identify the key forces driving change, to explore the most critical uncertainties, and to develop challenging yet plausible scenarios and implications. All right, let's get through this introduction. I want to touch on this part of why scenarios. Why are they using scenarios? Why does the Rockefeller Foundation take time, money, attention, meetings, resources, marshaling of those resources to put forth these scenarios? Let's check it out. Let's dig in for a second. Why scenarios? The goal of this project was not to affirm what is already known and knowable about what is happening right now at the intersections of technology and development. They're saying that we're not dealing with the present. We want to project into the future to see what the future is like. Continuing on. Rather, it was to explore the many ways in which technology and development could co-evolve, could both push and inhibit each other in the future, and then to examine what those possible alternative paths may imply for the world's poor and vulnerable populations. So just like when they're doing it for our safety, right? That was the Capo Cuomo. They care about people's lives. They're doing it for our safety. That's the same reason the Rockefellers, the foundation is getting together to put together these highly detailed scenarios, not because they choose to project a future that they wish to realize. It's not anything to do with business or business plan. They're doing it because they have a big heart and they care about people and their lives. I wanted to stress that point, not with sarcasm. I just wanted to point that out. All right. Scenario planning is a methodology designed to help guide groups and individuals through exactly this creative process. The process begins by identifying. Oh, that's the first part of learning, right? The process begins by identifying forces of change in the world and then combining, that's the processing part, parenthetically, those forces in different ways to create a diverse set of stories or scenarios. That is the rhetoric. That's the output. So for those of you playing at home who understand the trivium method and the input processing output method of learning, they're saying the input is identifying, that's the first step, combining, that's the second step, and then putting these scenarios out there to guide people should these things ever happen, right? So continuing on about how the future could evolve. Scenarios are designed to stretch our thinking about both the opportunities and the obstacles that the future might hold. They explore through narrative, events, and dynamics that might alter, inhibit, or enhance current trends, often in surprising ways. Together, a set of scenarios captures a range of possibilities, good and bad, expected and surprising, but always plausible. Importantly, the scenarios are not predictions. Rather, they are thoughtful hypotheses that allow us to imagine and then rehearse different strategies for how to be more prepared for the future, or more ambitiously, how to help shape better futures ourselves. They're not talking about us. They're talking about them shaping the future of other people. So a lot of time this document is offered out of context. I wanted to go through a little extra effort and put it in context for you. We are now going to go to the scenario that is applicable in this situation. There are 4 scenarios in this document. The first is Lockstep. The second is Clever Together. The third is Hack Attack. And the other one is Smart Scramble. We are going to focus tonight on Lockstep, a world of tighter, top-down government control and more authoritarian leadership. There's a typo there. Look at that. They got a typo in a Rockefeller document. With limited innovation and growing citizen pushback. Let's just break that open for a second. Oh, more authoritarian leadership. Check. Limited innovation. Check. Growing citizen pushback. Check. Wow, this document was written in 2010. It's almost like it predicts the future, but it's not a predicting. It's just a hypothesis, everybody. Just a hypothesis here that we're looking into. I'm just checking just reading stuff from the past, looking at hypotheses. Nothing to see here, everybody. Don't ban me, YouTube. We're going to have to cut out that intro clip that we came back with, too, with the Leonard Cohen for the YouTube distribution. Scenario narratives. Where's my tea? I need a sip. The scenarios that follow are not meant to be exhaustive. Rather, they are designed to be both plausible and provocative to engage your imagination while also raising new questions for you about what the future might look like and feel like. We now invite you to immerse yourself in each future world and consider 4 different visions for the evolution of technology and international development to 2030. Okay? They put 4 scenarios out. I'm going to read from the one that I feel is pertinent and relevant, and they probably chose this scenario to unfold technological development and society as they are describing. This is called Lockstep. This is page 18. Here's the page number right there on the document, and it's being circulated in the Grand Theft World Discord server under updates. It's probably also in the autonomy class chat, and it will also be in the references and links for this podcast episode. Scenario narratives, Lockstep, a world of tighter, top-down government control and more authoritarian leadership. See, there's proof of that typo. The L is there. With limited innovation and growing citizen pushback. In 2012, again, this document was written in 2010. Okay, so it's projecting 2 years in the future at this point back then. In 2012, the pandemic that the world had been anticipating for years finally hit. Unlike 2009's H1N1, let's put some light on here, see if it shows up better. This new influenza strain originating from wild geese. Parenthetically, the official story is either bats or labs. You got to do some research to figure that out for yourself. Continuing on, was extremely virulent and deadly. Even the most pandemic prepared nations were quickly overwhelmed when the virus streaked around the world, infecting nearly 20% of the global population and killing 8 million in just 7 months. I want to stop here and pause for a second. The Event 201 war game exercise that went on in October 2019, their projection was that 67 million around the world would die from the novel coronavirus that they projected in that. That's Event 201. That's a separate situation. There is overlap between the people and nonprofit foundations involved in their agendas, but I shall continue on so as not to bore you or go too far off on a tangent. The majority of them young adults. The pandemic also had a deadly effect on economies. International mobility of both people and goods screeched to a halt, debilitating industries like tourism and breaking global supply chains. Even locally, normally bustling shops and office buildings sat empty for months, devoid of both employees and customers. The pandemic blanketed the planet. Skipping down, the United States' initial policy of strongly discouraging citizens from flying proved deadly in its leniency, accelerating the spread of the virus not just within the United States, but across borders. However, a few countries did fare better. China in particular. The Chinese government's quick imposition and enforcement of mandatory quarantine for all citizens, as well as its instant and near hermetic sealing off of its borders, saved millions of lives. That's a goal that we've heard repeating, right? The saving millions of lives. We'll talk about that in just a second. Stopping the spread of the virus far earlier than in other countries and enabling a swifter post-pandemic recovery. Excuse me while I clear my throat, because unfortunately for those who wrote this document, they don't expect us to know any history that's relevant. And I know some history that's relevant on this. This is from the Rockefeller Foundation. This is the scenario narrative that they're unfolding. They say in their narrative that China, predictably, 10 years ahead of time, handled this much better because they were able to crack down on their people, and their people were basically obedient and would submit to whatever the government said, right? That's interesting, because I also know that David Rockefeller wrote an article in the New York Times in 1976, fact check me if I'm wrong, called Something of a Fellow China Traveler, Stories from a China Traveler. And in that, David Rockefeller publicly printed in the paper of record, in that article, he says that Mao Zedong, who killed 40 or 50 million of his own people in China under communism, was funded by Rockefeller, and that it was one of his best experiments. That the Rockefeller family not only had funded the Soviet Union, but was also instrumental in bringing communism to China and setting it up there, because it's a big wealth reappropriation system that doesn't need anybody's buy-in to it. Communist government takes over, everybody loses everything, it belongs to the government, and above the government are private people who own property and violate all the rules of communism. So it's what's good for the goose is not good for the gander, type of contradiction. It's shown in Brave New World by Aldous Huxley that the elite upper level, while they preach all this control, they're actually accessing all that forbidden information in order to have power over these other people. So I'm sorry, I got incredulous and I had to stop, but I just wanted to mention the people who put the money into this foundation that are trying to save people. They were responsible for democide on a grand scale of tens and tens of millions of people during the 20th century. They have not indicated they changed their attitudes, values, behaviors, or beliefs one iota. So to read this document and just be like, they're just writing it down, it doesn't mean anything, I would say you are ignorant of the history that is easily available and organizable, that you just haven't looked. And it would be easier to call me a name than to understand what we're saying here. So I'm going to continue on. This is going to go past the first page. Let's hit the button and go back. China's government was not the only one that took extreme measures to protect its citizens from risk and exposure. During the pandemic, national leaders around the world flexed their authority and imposed airtight rules and restrictions, from the mandatory wearing of face masks to body temperature checks at the entries to communal spaces like train stations and supermarkets. Even after the pandemic faded, this more authoritarian control and oversight of citizens and their activities stuck and even intensified. What was the first story we did tonight, Tyler? Do you remember what the first story was that we covered tonight? Something about Tim Pool saying that the rules are going to go up, even though there's this thing going on out there, right? Can you verify that that's the first story that we covered? That's like, well, they're talking about this in 2010. How do they know what Tim Pool was going to report on this week? What's going on?
Correct. Where are the fact checkers when we need them?
In order to protect themselves from the spread of increasingly global problems, from pandemics and to transnational terrorism to environmental crises and rising poverty, leaders around the world took a firmer grip on power. All right, so that part's called the global reset, the Great Reset. That's what they're calling it. Klaus Schwab, World Economic Forum, the Great Reset, and the World Economic Forum sponsored Event 201, which was the war game or exercise that practiced it not 10 years ahead, but 6 weeks ahead of the pandemic. So there's an ominous continuity to this information when you get into it. Let's continue. This is getting interesting. At first, the notion of a more controlled world gained wide acceptance and approval. Citizens willingly gave up some of their sovereignty and their privacy to more paternalistic states in exchange for greater safety and stability. Citizens were more tolerant and even eager for top-down direction and oversight, and national leaders had more latitude to impose order in the ways they saw fit. In developed countries, this heightened oversight took many forms. Biometric IDs for all citizens, for example, and tighter regulation of key industries whose stability was deemed vital, dare I say essential, parenthetically, to national interests. And many developed countries enforced cooperation with a suite of new regulations and agreements slowly but steadily restored both order and, importantly, economic growth, parenthetically, under the Great Reset, under the what do they call it? The Great Reset? That's their branding on this New World Order activity they're doing. All right, so I also just had circled Ghana. There's a BitChute video that's circulated from the president of Ghana. I don't know if it's verified. There's a lot of interesting things said in that conversation that sounded like it could be the president of Ghana. And does he have a leaked document that is not this document, but a much more updated specified plan, because that's what his claim was in it. This is not the purpose of this show, nor is it a clip on this show. It's not on Grand Theft World, so I'll leave it to you if you want to find that. Let's go to the next relevant aspect. Let's just go to the end of the Lockstep narrative, because you want to know the future, right? These are the people writing your future until you change it. By 2025, people seemed to be growing weary of so much top-down control and letting leaders and authorities make choices for them. Wherever national interests clashed with individual interests, there was conflict. Sporadic pushback became increasingly organized and coordinated as disaffected youth and people who had seen their status and opportunities slip away, largely in developing countries, incited civil unrest. Then it goes into 2026 and what was going on in their established plan for Africa. And that is really there's also a timeline. Let's go over the timeline real quick. Headlines in Lockstep. Quarantine restricts in-person contact. Cellular networks overloaded. Intercontinental trade hit by strict pathogen controls. Italy addresses immigrant caregiver gap with robots. 2020, will Africa's embrace of authoritarian capitalism a la China continue? Right? So you have a socialist, communist underpinning where you have slave labor and then you have ruling elites on top. They're like, oh, we can take China and put it on Africa, put that whole model of subjugation on a whole continent. Vietnam in 2021, Vietnam to require a solar panel on every home. Proliferating trade networks in Eastern and Southern Africa, strengthen regional ties. That's like a throwaway. African leaders fear repeat of Nigeria's 2026 government collapse, right? So I don't think that collapse is necessarily going to be in Africa, but these sort of things are are all unfolding in lockstep. There's a couple more parts: the role of philanthropy, technology in lockstep, life in lockstep, and then this is the next scenario. So if you did want to read the next 3 pages that we're not going to cover right now, or 4 pages, they are there in the unedited document on archive.org, preserved in time for you. And I will now open the floor for comments, questions, incredulity, any of these types of things that go on when you are exposed to a new piece of information that heretofore you probably didn't know in that specificity or detail that it existed, what it meant, what it has to say, and how accurate their hypothesis is of our present day. Anyone who's got something?
That Rockefeller short throws a shindig in Manhattan for Christmas. Hell of a Christmas tree.
That's a good point, James. Rockefeller Center is named after that same family, and in Rockefeller Center they have TV studios. NBC has TV studios. British intelligence had their stronghold during World War II. The British Security Coordination, it was called. They also ran all sorts of covert ops out of Rockefeller Center. And yes, it's also known because it gets a big Christmas tree and has a gala festivity every Christmas that people feel the warm and fuzzy from that public relations kind of offering. But behind the scenes, they're very busy hives of bees, those Rockefellers. And their documents leave it interesting. This is not the only document that foreshadows what's going on today, but it is the one that seems like everyone's kind of referring to it, but no one's taken the time to kind of like break it down. And here's the context. And they call it this 10 years ago, but really they're calling it the Great Reset right now. Right. So in the idea of the lockdowns, the masks, the authoritarian thing, that this was not a surprise to them. They saw that in this type of scenario of a novel coronavirus going around the planet, these types of things would happen. They did nothing to help us prepare for it, by the way. And also Event 201 put on by the esteemed Johns Hopkins University, Bloomberg School of Health, the World Economic Forum, the Gates Foundation, all coming together. They knew exactly, if you watch Event 201 in its entirety for whatever, 5 hours, they knew everything that was going to happen. They didn't produce masks. They didn't set aside respirators. You don't see the Bill Gates coronavirus like fighting wings at hospital. No. These people were all about immunity on subscription, biometric tracing of human beings. That's all their goals. And the coronavirus pandemic that you're in right now, that's just how they get there. I'm not saying they created it. I'm just saying they're taking this as the fast track to their goals in a way such that they could never have reached their goals this fast ever without this global pandemic situation that was also brought up in a 2017 Pentagon influenza pandemic planning document. Pentagon pandemic planning document. It's hard to say. On page 9 of that, they define what would be a pandemic. And could MERS or SARS or Ebola, could they create these things? No, they said what would be a global pandemic would be a novel coronavirus. And they went about describing a lot of what's going on right now. This is a 2017 document. This is before they closed Fort Detrick in August of 2019 for working on offensive bioweapons like what's going on around right now that weren't on their database. Congress shut them down. The Obama administration shut them down. Or no, Trump shut them down. Obama did the gain of function research.
Yeah, and somehow Fauci
so anyway, there's
called out.
There's a lot to get into with all that. Go ahead, Tyler.
Surprise pandemic, right? Fauci knew in 2017. And this is not like, you can see it, the clip yourself. I could pull it up right here, of him calling out, hey, there'll be a surprise outbreak here in the next few years, definitely in Trump's presidency. And somehow he knew. I mean, you could say he was aligning his facts and what he knows and everything, but it's strikingly eerie to know see what he knows that's verifiably out there, and then to see the events that have occurred.
The other place where you can see shocking Fauci information would be on the Red Pill Sunday School YouTube channel run by Clint Richardson in his documentary Wagging the Dog. If you go about 50 minutes into it, maybe you'll start to see Fauci on screen a whole bunch. He's not talking necessarily about COVID now. He's talking about gain of function and the use and the amending of coronaviruses with other things that it's biological offensive warfare. And he talks in great detail in that movie. So for him to sit up on stage and say he doesn't know anything about all this stuff and it came from bats at a wet market, would be really, really hard to say, like, how do you respond to all this then? All this footage of you being present in these meetings where you said, and they said, hey, this is really dangerous. It could get out. What happens if it does? We can't control it. And then you guys decided to do all that anyway. So when you see what kind of character Fauci's been over a 20 or 30 year arc of time, that's much better to see what's going on than to watch him on the nightly news or wherever he's getting to talk. And it's like him fighting with Trump. Like, who is Anthony Fauci? When was the last time he practiced medicine on an actual patient who didn't die? Because if you look at his history, he fed AZT, an experimental drug, to a lot of people, and almost 100% of them died. And he got promoted. So there's a whole bunch to that. I'm not saying he's good or bad guy. I'm just saying these facts exist. And from those facts, you can make your own judgments. What's the next clip on the agenda there, Tyler?
Oh, we could go to a number of things here. What do you want to go to? We got Lawrence had a document up on the screen. I'm not sure.
There we go. We go first to the
there.
fact checkers to make sure we don't leave any of these.
He was trying to
stones
call you
unturned.
out on something.
Oh yeah.
Call me out. What do you got?
Oh, no. Just from a China traveler. From a China traveler, David Rockefeller, August 10th, 1973. You search that, it comes up with the New York Times archive. There's an image of it, and then you read it in the digital form.
Can you search Mao in there? Does he say anything about Mao?
Chairman Mao. Oh yeah, he's right here.
Didn't he write his obituary?
Well, I don't know about that. That'd be good trivia. We should make a Trivial Pursuit.
I believe he
game.
did.
Non-trivial pursuits. That's what we're playing right now. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I refresh my mind on the exact verbiage that he said about China and their greatest experiment. And now I'll put that in place. 1973, August. That's 2 months before I was born. So now I'll remember the year a little easier. And then each time you try to purvey these facts and fact check them, your recall becomes better. We did this on a call the other day, going over a cybernetics reference from In the Minds of Men, The Origins of Revolutionary Faith by James H. Billington, who was a Rhodes Scholar and Librarian of Congress. I had the page number wrong, but I had the quote right. What do you got, LD? Is it text searchable?
Oh yeah. There's mention of Mao a few times. The last paragraph, he says the social experiment in China under Chairman Mao's leadership is one of the most important and successful in human history. How extensively China opens up and how the world interprets and reacts to the social innovations and lifestyles she has developed is certain to have a profound impact on the future of many nations.
That's interesting. So,
understatement.
1973, that's him reflecting on his family's influence in China over all those years. And their social experiment of slave labor and what they've brought now is social credit score to the rest of the world through this, right? That's a long-term arc of, they're not forgetting what they're doing. They have a long-term plan and they keep chipping away at that long-term plan. Are there any other interesting tidbits before we move away from that artifact of evidence? Where was that published, by the way? Is that?
This is the New York Times.
Oh, I've heard of them.
August 10th, 1973. From the loud. No, we can leave it at that. People can check that out.
Cool. Thanks for digging that up.
Yes, sir.
I could have typed it up in the history blueprint, but it would have taken me time away from the other things I'm doing right now. I appreciate it. Any other comments or questions before we move forward?
I think it might have been wrong. It might have been Fox Butterfield, not David Rockefeller, that wrote the obituary for Mao Zedong.
Thank you for correcting that as well.
Fox Butterfield.
But now you do something. You do know something relevant that David Rockefeller wrote about Mao Zedong that was not his obituary.
That's some Trivial Pursuits.
Yeah, Foxy Butterfield, that's Trivial Pursuit, and David Rockefeller, Letter from a China Traveler, that's
a
not
Bond.
trivial.
That's a Bond lady, if I ever heard one.
Yeah, we'll get to Ian Fleming in episode 3 of this, but we're not there yet. All right, so what do we got for next clips? Did we get?
Well, we have a couple things that I wanted to go over here really quick while my children are slamming on the
Do
piano
it. Do
here in
it.
the
Take advantage of
background.
that opportunity.
And one of those would be the Discord server here. Hopefully you're seeing my screen. Let me just transition this. Okay, there we go. And that would be our Discord server here, Grand Theft World Podcast. We have people dropping clips in here. Tim Flynn, he's like a mage of the Grand Theft World Discord server over here. And we can follow up on each other and follow up on the episodes that are going on live here. There's lots of other rooms in the server here. You can see people talking about the big C19 solutions, a big topic of discussion, society, and then there's more advanced areas that you can kind of get to by just participating in the show, even as we're doing here, as we see people that are more actively involved at this point. That's how you're kind of getting more promoted in this server. And then at some point it'll become, kind of a closed access thing where we're huddling down and producing these episodes together. And the other thing you can do is hop over to grandtheftworld.com and go to /live, and you can catch the live show there streaming, and also hop into the Twitch server if you'd like to. Create an account, give us a follow. We're brand new on there. We do have some people watching tonight, so I appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching, and be sure to comment in the chat, say what's up. And besides that, I do appreciate Ben Swan's reporting. So let's go to one of his clips really quick here.
Allegations have been made in a state where the margin of victory for Joe Biden right now stands at only 48,000 votes, an incredibly small number when you consider the fact that more than 6 million people voted in the election. So how widespread are these allegations of election fraud? But before we get into all that, including allegations that people as old as 200 years old voted in this election, we want to give a shout out to our sponsor for this episode, Kim Daly, thedailycoach.com. If you've ever thought about being your own boss or being an entrepreneur, you've got to talk to Kim Daly. She is America's #1 franchise consultant, and she can help you to understand what you're looking for in terms of owning your own business. If you've ever thought about owning your own business, maybe you should consider a franchise, because it's not what you might think. It's certainly not just restaurants and bars that fall into the category of franchising. Certainly not just food service. In fact, there are many, many different categories, and Kim can help you to understand that. Her consultation is completely free. She can help to set you on a path to entrepreneurship and franchise ownership. Be sure to check out thedailycoach.com. It is with her help that we are creating this series on election fraud. All right, let's talk about what's happening right now in the state of Pennsylvania, because some pretty remarkable things are taking place there, and a number of challenges have been made. You've probably heard about the biggest one, which is that poll watchers were not allowed to be in a position to really see what was happening during the vote count, specifically in Pennsylvania and in the city of Philadelphia. Now, you've heard these claims before, and now, of course, we hear Democrats saying that Republican poll watchers were allowed in the room. According to Kayleigh McEnany, the White House press secretary and also spokesperson for the Trump campaign on this recount effort, she says it's not so much a matter of whether or not they were allowed in the room, it was whether or not they were allowed meaningful access. Listen to this.
Our poll watchers were put behind barricades in a massive room. They were many feet from the counting process. And in fact, when you look at all of the tables, many hundreds of feet, in fact, from the tables in the very back. They were completely in the dark, completely unable to oversee the vote count, as was their legal right. An observer on the scene described it this way. Imagine being on a football field. You're on the 10-yard line and expected to make a call in the end zone on the other side of the field. It is unacceptable.
The other case that the Trump campaign is making is over the issue of whether or not the same kind of access to things like curing of ballots was allowed uniformly across the state of Pennsylvania. The Trump campaign says it was not. In fact, they say there were one set of rules for some counties that were heavily Democratic and other sets of rules for counties that were heavily Republican. Listen to this.
And finally, a mere survey of the facts shows that voters in blue counties like Philadelphia County were given certain privileges that voters in red counties were not afforded. The Constitution's Equal Protection Clause requires uniform standards, but Democrat election officials created disparities depending on where citizens lived and where they voted in the state. Some counties set up satellite offices for backdoor early voting, whereas other counties did not. Some counties allowed pre-canvassing, where other counties did not. Voters in some counties were allowed to cure their ballots, whereas voters in other counties were not.
So you have all of those issues which need to be investigated, and they absolutely need to be investigated. But then there's also the question of whether or not dead people voted who were ineligible to vote. Now, this is pretty interesting because we did our own research on this issue. According to the Pennsylvania voter registration, at least 2,000 people over the age of 99 years old did cast ballots in this election. Some, though, as old as 220 years old. That's right. Now, these could just be clerical errors that have been made. That's most likely the case. Someone didn't actually fill it out stating that they were born in 1800 or stating that they were born in 1900. However, even if that is the case, the question becomes who filled out these ballots, why were they sent in, and what is the error? Because if you look at the return of where most of these ballots came in so far, of these very old people over 99 years old, most of them come in Allegheny County, which is around Pittsburgh. It was a stronghold for Biden. And if you look at who these people voted for, they lean heavily towards voting Democrat. And now reports that 20,000 absentee ballots in Pennsylvania have actually impossible return dates, and more than 80,000 have return dates that raise questions, according to a researcher's analysis of the state voters database. Over 51,000 ballots were marked as returned just a day after they were sent out, an extraordinary speed given U.S. Postal Service delivery times, while nearly 35,000 were returned on the same day that they were mailed out. Another more than 23,000 have a return date earlier than the sent date, and more than 9,000 have no sent date at all.
I guess there's just a lot of options you can have for what counts as a vote. That's all. And I'm not so like I want people who had a legitimate vote to have their vote counted, and I want people who cheated and made stacks of vote for their favorite person on either side to have those votes not counted. But my real issue kind of is with the whole situation is that's the White House press secretary. And what I happened to see was a clip where Steven Crowder covered it, and he used to work for Fox. And Fox had this guy, Neil Cavuto, on there, and he was covering the press conference, and he became incredulous. And instead of continuing to listen to see what the evidence was, he cut it off. And he said, I can't in good conscience share this press conference with you because it's a bunch of fake news being spread, right? And had he just had the patience to listen and keep his mind open and not censor so readily, he would have heard all this evidence laid out. But instead, now we have to like go chase the clip and put it out because millions of people were shown not the truth in a very obvious area. I'm not saying that those claims are true, or I'm just saying this is all data that's out there around this event that is being occluded or like artificially separated from the people who really would find it valuable information and insights in making their decisions and judgments about their own lives. So the problem is the people we're playing against, they don't believe you have any rights to make decisions in your own life. But they're not living your life for you, are they? They're not doing all the hard stuff of your life for you. They just want to tell you what you can do with after you do all that hard work. That's not freedom. That's not what people fought and bled to put this country into existence or to maintain it and to keep that retained freedom over long periods of time. But they're very savvy. They're willing to work over a century at their plan. They're willing to dumb down generations. They're willing to prop up artificial news entities that are no longer journalistic news entities. They are no longer the fourth estate. They're like the fourth megaphone of another group that's already controlled the first two layers of the estate, the first two estates, right? So the government and the first three estates, the executive, the judiciary, and the legislative, they're supposed to be watched by the journalists who keep an eye on all these people and what they're doing. But when the journalism gets bought out by the same people who use lobbyists to buy out the political aspect, you don't have what's rendered in the Constitution as this is a government that you can live and have your rights maintained. They're doing quite the opposite, and almost every news clip shows they are taking your freedom in a way that they do not have your permission to take. But if you give it to them unwittingly, shame on you. There's a bunch of people out there that are a little more savvy and a little more traveled in the world, and they said, yeah, you know what, that's an interesting story, but I don't know if I buy it. And they do some fact checking, they do some research, they do some communication. They don't just assume that because they said it on NPR or Rush Limbaugh or anyone in between that it's true, right? Any comments on that, the recent clip?
Yeah, I have one question. Why do you think it is that these people, they're always playing the long game over generations? And I remember James Corbett did a bit where he was talking about how a lot of these politicians could be classified as like clinical psychopaths, sociopaths. Why would somebody like that, why would people like that play a long game to reap benefits that they'll never actually have? Why would they always do this?
I think that the predatory group is a small group, so they want to hide themselves, hide their numbers, hide their influence, because they knew if a fragment of the population were to discover that they were being manipulated by them, they would probably fight back or resist in some way. So there's a lot of different reasons why organizations and individuals participate in this type of nefarious nature activity that we're describing. But the first thing is there are institutions on this planet that outlive human beings. Some of those institutions have become corrupted over time, for sure. And then there's another aspect of in self-preservation, these people who think might makes right and truth is what strong people say it is, they band together. Otherwise, they're probably going to get scattered and lose their power. So they have a real reason for kind of putting up this defense system around them. It's not freedom-based, but it's like their own irrational reasoning. And so that's also intermixed out there. So does that help to shed light on your question, Caleb?
Yeah.
I also want to say it's multi-generational. So people who grew up in a current generation of a powerful family, whose family gets power from multi-generations of control and influence over a large expanse of time, it's either, if you can't beat them, join them. You can be a black sheep and be cut off, like Warren Buffett cut off like his granddaughter. And there's a couple good movies that I could just put on your radar real quick. There's Born Rich, which is maybe 2002. It's by a filmmaker named Jamie Johnson. Technically, his name is like James Johnson the third or fourth, because he's an heir to the Johnson and Johnson family. So when he turned 21, he inherited $1 billion or something like that. He made a documentary film about it. And what I remember seeing was, wow, look at this next generation of the ruling class's kids, because that's who's in the film. They're all lost. They don't know anything about themselves. They don't know how the world works. The people who are around them have lied to them about money, power, influence in their families' histories. And I felt bad for all of them. So at one point in 2004, Lisa and I got in touch with the filmmaker, Jamie Johnson, and we had a meeting with him in New York City, and we sat down with him for several hours, and I unfolded for him the research and evidence that I have made my living off of in the past 15 years of as far as purveying and analyzing and putting this out there. We kind of shared that and said RFIDs, technocracy, transhumanism, these are all on the table. And it was so far from what he's been told, it like bounced off him, right? So it's like he, at his level of being a new billionaire into that famous family, he had no clue about the World Economic Forum or any of these types of other things that go on in the world. Council on Foreign Relations, Bilderberg Group, Davos, any of these. He's not in their club either. So it's not like you have to feel like, woe is me, you didn't make it into their club. Even people in their club's not in their club anymore. He's a filmmaker. His second movie was called The 1%. And he learned a lot between those two movies. He learned a lot after we talked to him. And that film also kind of goes undercover to show you the mentality of the people who are doing this. And it is multi-generational. They don't know what else to do. They're scared of losing their wealth and their power. And thus they're willing to take your freedom. It's the easiest thing they know how to do. It's like what everyone else around him is doing. So from those aspects, those are good points of research. And I wanted to make sure I mentioned that multi-generational aspect, because a lot of people come into this and we're not multi-generational on this problem or the agenda. We're new to this. You have to realize there's other people who've been brought up many, many, many generations of being sucking on the tit of the British opium monopoly and black market around the world. That's where you get a lot of East Coast elites and wealthy families and robber barons and other people in American history that are pretty famous, but not very much talked about in the context of they made their family's wealth off of the sweat, the blood, the pain of other people around the world, because that's a system that exists, that power is definitely still flowing through today. No urgent comments or follow-up. Let's roll the next clip. What do we got on deck?
I have a statement.
Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
It's just a quick 15-line poem. I'll read it really fast, and it goes to what you're talking about, James H. Billington's book and
Yeah.
secret societies. Secret societies being the ecstasy of death and the realization that your spirit can't die. Just as a quick primer, the fate of your body is life and its destiny is death, but the fate of your spirit is death and the destiny of your spirit is life. So plants are energy binders, animals are space binders, and human beings are time binders. And that's what this group is. It's a time binding group. So I'll read this real quick. It's from Synthesis Remembered. Is not all transcendent experience the result of a boundless hope, which, while fragile, is founded in eternal permanence? A permanence that, though flowing, is perceived never to cease? And is not this hope the existential base of that perception that, past all fragility and despair, the ecstasy that is life will never cease, even in its most infinitesimal manifestations? And does not the updwelling of this quiet but ecstatic hope in those who persist in seeking at last quell the anger of rebellious youth so grimly attached to that bitterness of despair? And if it does not updwell or is diverted by scorn, does not that very dawning at last await in the portals of death, even for those who have most despaired of it? What else shall we call it but the ecstasy of death, that most profound outflowing of what we call the love and mercy of God? Perhaps after all, this is the gate of heaven. And I would say that what they're connected to is some sort of Luciferian aspect of that, which is a different conversation.
Right on. Thank you for that poetic offering. And I'm sure there'll be more discussion about that in the class chat. I'd also like to see the source link for that so that in post-production we can put it on screen since
Yes, I'll provide that.
Yeah, no problem. Cool. Any other comments, questions, concerns?
I just wanted to pop in and say that the idea of an addiction-based economy, even though it's sort of, I don't know, I first started hearing about it with social media and even the Social Dilemma documentary was kind of news to me, but it realizing, as you talk about the British East India Company, this model of getting people hooked on something seems to go back really far historically. And I just wanted to express some curiosity about that. If there was like, I mean, what does it go back to? I mean, tobacco, spices? I don't know.
Cod. It goes back to cod too. Cod was a food source. It was used as a currency in early proto-American times. There's a book on it I just read a couple weeks ago that my buddy Dylan, his dad, gave it to me. And he's like, check this out. They were using it in their trade. You know, you could trade cod for slaves. It was a type of currency in the time, just like molasses and all these other parts of the. We're taught one aspect of triangle trade. It's like cotton, fabrics, molasses, and there's this triangle trade. The British had another triangle trade on the other side of the world where they take finished cotton from here over to Manchester, England, and they would make it into textiles. They'd take it to India where people could want these textiles, but they can't produce them themselves and they have nothing to trade. So guess what? People in India, why don't you get these big balls of opium together? And then if you look us up on Google Images right now, you could see opium warehouse, India, British Empire days, just to the ceiling, like a 30, 40, 50-foot ceiling, just racks and racks and balls of opium. Where does that opium go, you might say? That's a great question. Thank you for asking it. They take the opium over to China, where China wouldn't conduct trade with the West. They wouldn't conduct trade with the Europeans because they had tea, they had silks, they had all sorts of cool things, and all they would accept is silver and gold. So after Queen Elizabeth and all these other people, it was Queen Elizabeth I, all these people start getting the Chinese trade, and they start trading opium, and they're giving all their silver and their gold over to China because China also had access to these types of things. They at some point said, or it was just, they sent their gold and silver to China, not for opium, but for tea, silks, and fine things, porcelain. But China wouldn't take European goods because they were inferior. So finally, the Europeans are like, hey, how do we get our gold and silver back from that country that doesn't want to trade with us? And the British Empire was like, And the East India Company has a predecessor that we could point out. Let me actually, I'll type in a second into the history blueprint here, and I can show you the origins. But I have a bunch of books on these topics. So it was called Levant Company. So prior to the English or the East India Company of Great Britain, there was a predecessor trading company. There's a couple different ones. There's also the Dutch East India Company, but it's the British one that subjugated the nation of China for over 100 years with opium addiction. So when the Rockefellers pick up on the British project in the 20th century, the British have already subjugated China through opium addiction and subjugation through military might for over 100 years that the Chinese called their century of humiliation. So the Rockefeller Foundation is not acting outside of the British Empire's purview to use these types of techniques and these mechanisms for invisible government that's talked about with Bernays and Lippmann throughout the world for a long, long time. So I could look up, or we could do a thing during the week and we could deep dive into the East India Company, the opium, the Anglo-American families on the American side, the Skull and Bones fortune. Like, who funded Skull and Bones? It's the Russell Trust Company. What did Russell Trust Company do? They smuggle opium. What did John Jacob Astor and his company trade furs for in China? Opium. Hundreds of tons of opium. Like, you can read the ship's manifest. There's documents on all this stuff, but as long as they say that's conspiracy theory, nobody goes and looks up the interesting stuff. And that's why I feel a need to like do that and purvey it and entertain great questions like that. Because if I assume people know this stuff, then there's nothing interesting going on. And for you to ask a question like that, Adam, it's like, next time you're here, man, next week, we'll go upstairs, we'll get those books out. I can give you the broad spectrum of, there's a book called The Opium Monopoly.
I want to follow up. So does all of this opium stuff in the British Empire, as the you said the Rockefellers, right, take over that project? Does that then hook into the modern pharmaceutical companies that are profiting so much from opiates like morphine and Vicodin and all that?
Yeah. Yeah. Now you're making a continuity of history, and a lot of the heroin and poppy, the poppy fields. Heroin was a product of Bayer, patented in like 1876. Prior to that, there was morphine, and prior to that, there was just opium. So opium comes from the poppy, and in the 1830s, they refined it into like morphine, and then that's patented to German chemist, I'm pretty sure. And then they make heroin, which was a street legal advertised drug by the Bayer company, who also sold AIDS-tainted bloods and what was it, Factor 8 that they knew and infected people. So these are great corporations.
That was Ryan White. Yeah.
Ryan White. All right. So there's long train of abuses in this history, an ominous continuity, as John Taylor Gatto would say. But until people start to grasp at it, it's like, yeah, you learn this little part and you see this little part. It's like, do those two connect together? It's like, yes, the connection is the British Empire. The reason we're in Afghanistan now, the reason that American troops guard Afghan poppy fields for the past 20 years, longest war in American history. You know why? Because the British had a first, second, and third Anglo-Afghan war. Why? Because that's a place where they can grow the heroin that subjugates China, which is this mighty giant that otherwise they couldn't do. And there was an opium war. There's a first opium war and a second opium war where the Chinese emperor tried to resist the British encroachment and the colonization of Hong Kong and all this other stuff that still exists today. So to learn the history allows you to understand and see the dynamics of, oh, Hong Kong used to be an opium trading outpost. There's a lot of British banking that made its name over there because of that opium trading. Some of those banks are still in business today. And Ian Fleming, the writer, comes from a multi-billion-dollar family, Thomas Fleming and Associates, that dealt in the opium trade back then. So all these things that I'm talking about, they're not so far from the people you see and love. And I love those movies and stories by Ian Fleming about, Spectre, and those dynamics are real. And they laugh at us for not knowing the history, that they're kind of like, they're doing their thing unhindered, really, through history. But they don't have to continue like that. It's just that happens until we are aware of it.
All right, that was a fire hose moment for me. Thank you. I'm going to try and integrate as much of that as possible.
Cool. And then whatever is ambiguous, we'll hit it next week when we do some filming.
Right on. Thank you.
What do you got on deck there next, Tyler?
What no means. Let's just show you what no means, okay?
Go down and get the papers. They spied on my campaign. They got caught.
No.
And then they went much further than that, and they got caught. And you will.
Oh.
We'll see that, Leslie, and you know that, but you just don't want to put it on the.
No.
As a matter of fact.
No, I don't. I don't know that. No. And of course, YouTube's giving me the problems, but no. They just tell you no. I typed in the word Dominion. I didn't type in Dominion election.
I don't know that.
Okay. And you're out
So
there.
why don't you get back to your interview and let's go?
Do you think that you?
This is 60 Minutes. You know, I almost want to go back to the beginning of it, but no, I'm not gonna give Leslie the time. No. They didn't spy on your campaign. There's no scandal about Hunter Biden and his laptop or Joe Biden. No. It's just no. So this is General McHenry on Bannon's show talking about the exact thing that happens in the election, prior to the election.
Now you might say, well, I don't like Trump and his side can't just declare there's voting fraud and get those votes thrown out. And that's correct. It's impartial judges within the US court system who get to determine if there's in fact any voting fraud and if any votes get thrown out. Thank God, because I'm pretty sure each side is dirty and dishonest enough that they'd both be willing to cheat and therefore shouldn't be trusted. That's why we have the justice system, which is presumably the only thing in this scenario that is trustworthy. As the legal proceedings, proceed in determining who the legal winner of the election is, it's very possible the courts and electoral college, etc., will determine Joe Biden is the winner of the election after all fair votes are counted and any fraudulent votes are thrown out. That's totally cool. These people stay happy, democracy is upheld, and we can have faith in all future elections. It'd be great. Another possibility, and it might not have a high probability, yet it is realistically a possibility, is that Donald Trump proves to be the winner of the election, even after the media's called it for the other guy. It's happened before. If Trump wins, then you have a very sad group of people over here instantly turn happy and probably act like jerks to the other side. Let's just be real. Yet democracy is upheld and we can have faith in all future elections. But remember these people over here? What happens to them if they find out Trump is the legal winner of the election after many weeks of believing and feeling with absolute certainty that Biden has won the election? Answer? Emotional hysteria, and they won't believe the real election results. If this proves to be the case, Trump wins and that's the reality, do you see how far from reality these people have been led by the media? The larger the divide, the more tension there is to erupt. And this is a very large divide. Think of it this way. What happens when you give a child a toy? They love it, right? But then what happens if you take that toy away? Because the child believed it was their toy, they feel as though you've wronged them. So they're willing to explode with emotional hysteria and destroy the house. Except in this case, the house is our country. But when you factor in that we're living in a year where the media has already established that rioting is okay, then the child's basically been given permission to destroy the house. Because we've already practiced it. And then you have a civil war. Because the media's influence over people is stronger than the influence that the legal reality has over people. Because whoever controls the narrative controls the people. You get the idea. But why has this house of cards been set up this way? Because these people up here that really want Trump out of office are willing to manipulate people to destroy their lives and country to underhandedly get their guy into office. It's an attempt to have emotional persuasion overthrow legislation. Oh, and by the way, who are these people? I don't know. They stay behind the scenes because darkness loses power in the light.
All right, so that's two clips moved together. There was a part of that cut that's in the Jason Burmis clip where it was cutting to Steve Bannon doing an interview with this former guy from the military and talking about Project Hammer and Project Scorecard, which are vote flipping applications used by military intelligence in other countries to overthrow their elections, which could never be used here in our country, I'm sure. So there is more interesting things. I'm not a fan of Steve Bannon, but I did find that interesting with the military whistleblower to be interesting enough to consider it. So there's a lot more substance in some of these clips than we're able to like squeeze out during the show, but it's also important to like, let's keep it moving forward. Let's have a couple laughs with JP because he makes it makes it so obvious, the absurdity. And then when we can laugh at it, that fear can't have hold of us at the same time we're laughing about it. So it's kind of an important pacing strategy. Looking to round up the clips for the rest of the episode here. What's next on deck, Tyler? What do we got? And then we'll do some quick Q&A because I'm not looking to go more than 4 hours on this for sure. There's a lot happened this week, though. A lot of good things going on.
Is there someone that wants to chime in on?
No,
any
that
of the
was
recent
Lisa. I think
stuff?
she just bumped her button while she was saying goodbye to the guests who just left the studio.
Well, we got a few more clips from Burmis. We have a Passio interview that came out this week from on your channel. I think we should just start going for the full Monty here and just start live streaming until you get taken off of YouTube. But maybe we'll just stay over here where we're at, and we could just put out clips of things happening or the edited version for people out on YouTube.
Soon enough. I want to make sure all the tech and everything works before we go public.
Yeah, I'm just tempting fate. Yeah, no, really. Yeah, we got to get the tech on board here. But yeah, I mean, there's other clips we could play. We've been going for 3.5 hours almost now. So if the audience wants to wind it down, let's get your comments in now before we go into some other clip that will take us off. Yeah, there's Raymer.
Go ahead, Mr.
Is it
Raymer.
my assignment time?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's do it.
Okay, cool.
How long is your presentation?
As long as it needs to be. I'll try to keep it concise.
Are you going to be on video? Are there slides to go with it? I was just thinking of how to cover
no slides, but
of how to cover the B-roll for the final.
Yeah, I think I'm disabled for video right now anyway. So let's see here. Here's my document. Well, thank you. What you asked me to cover last week was Jocko's review of a book on Unit 731, and as I watched the show, I realized that there's more to be commented on here than just Unit 731. Unit 731 by itself can be thumbnailed very quickly as human experimentation done by the Japanese during World War II, containing great atrocities. We have to ask the question of why for several entities here. First, why Unit 731 did what it did. Why was this book written? And why did Jocko choose to cover this book? And of course, I think the whole show today, we've kind of covered the why of Unit 731. I mean, you could argue that someone would want to do this to figure out how they could pull the levers of humanity and manipulate people, kill people efficiently. Beyond that, there's psychological things you can learn from it. There's political influence. You can use this against your enemies. The book itself is kind of a mystery to me. Are you trying to prevent these atrocities? Or are you trying to dismiss these atrocities and get people to just stand down because they have a knowledge of this and they become anesthetized to the horror of it, and they just do nothing because they say, oh yeah, that happened in the past. That stuff doesn't happen anymore. So there's a greater context, and I haven't read the book. I've only listened to the podcast. So I would be curious for anyone who actually read the book, does it go ahead and does it talk about the dissemination of this knowledge to other parties like the Russians and how the Americans brought these people on board, which is one thing that Jocko covered in his podcast. Anyone who's looked at the MK Ultra doctors and the seeming psychopathy whenever you interview one of these MK Ultra doctors, that would remind you of Ishii, the Japanese doctor that was in control of Unit 731. So I am curious, why would you write this book? Now, for Jocko, I'm curious, why would you cover this book? Now, he has a great monologue at the end where he talks about how one should be able to destroy or strike out against great evil. And while I think that has a great sounding, it sounds wonderful, especially after hearing these horrible things that Yishi did. There's the unfortunate part that he, being from his background, a Navy SEAL, I think, he fought on the side that protected those doctors. So whenever he would have been sent out to kill the evil, he would have been protecting the evil, and there would have been nothing he could have done about it. He would have been protecting that evil. So those are my takeaways from that podcast, is 3 whys. Why would they do it? Why would this book be written? And why would Jocko talk about it? And for Jocko, I would have to say that part of this could be, perhaps, this is judging motives, the knowledge of the atrocities that maybe he was part of, that he would not talk about because of secrecy, and some sort of salving of his conscience, or perhaps justifying some of the things that he may have been involved in, or encouraging the populace to approve of atrocities. And I think that that's what I take out of the whole thing.
Yeah, I would see it. I would see it without judgment and just say it's a benign position that maybe he doesn't understand and it hasn't trickled down through. But he definitely, and all military personnel have basically been unwitting, nescient beneficiaries of those experiments, because and they could hear about it in a training course and say, you know how we can keep you safe up here at 90,000 feet, because those people in experiment 731, we know this, that the human blood boils under this low pressure, and we put a pressure suit around you and pump it tight to keep your blood, these types of things that allow the U-2 spy plane to fly over Russia and take the pictures and do all this stuff. It's like the human blood does not function right at that altitude. They had to take those experiments to be able to make space travel, to make high upper stratosphere type of travel at 100,000 feet, right? Because it's not the same as 30,000 or 10,000 or even 1,000 feet. It's very different dynamic. And we could sacrifice good American boys but they are like, oh, let's just have the enemy do it. And funny how that information didn't get destroyed or scuttled when things went, the wrong way for that enemy. It conveniently landed in the the Rockefeller Foundation and these other nonprofit foundations were able to gather up all that information, and they cut the working orders for places like CIA to do experiments and so on and so forth, right? So it's not CIA Rockefeller Foundation. It's very much nonprofit foundations above intelligence agencies. And when you look at the first people, not in our country, because you got to look around, who was the first directors of MI6? Where did they come from? Where did they have experience at De Beers Diamonds for Cecil Rhodes and other places like this, colorful characters in the globalist trilogy.
Say the same thing about the space program.
Absolutely.
It was, right. Was it
NASA?
Right. NASA, was it simply to go beyond to show what humans are capable of, or was it more to create a spy satellites?
And they're like the kings of occult. Occult symbolism is all over their projects. Who loves occult symbolism? You got some Nazis, you got some Freemasons, you put them together, you got NASA. That's basically what you see going on there. Let me be Buzz Aldrin. Let me give you the net. There's not accidental symbols that they are giving to each other in these types of pictures. It's how they communicate. It's another level. Yeah. Cool.
Well, thanks for the opportunity.
No problem. Should we choose the last clip, Tyler? Should we just say, here's 3 or 5 left and let's pick one? Or should we go straight to Q&A and anyone else who wants to ask questions?
Hey, I don't really have a question, but I do have something that I've made available to everyone here, and it's getting kind of late for me, and my energy's kind of low. But I did drop a solutions PDF in the class chat, and it's about 6 pages long. I am not going to read it. Okay, I'm not going to read it out loud, but I'm going to tell you guys where I'm coming from and why I put it together. And I want to thank you for inspiring me last week to do this. And so, I'm not a fearful person. and I handle things pretty well. But I just like the rest of you guys look and see what's on these guys' wish lists and their immediate wish lists. Like for me, January 21st, is not a date I'm looking forward to. And so, I was thinking, what can we do? What can we do? Because I see everybody asking, what can we do? And G. Edward Griffin, he asked, he's like, we need, we need a strategy, right? And so I feel pretty good about what I've come up with, and so I'm honestly, I'm not going to go over it, but it's
Yeah, just give us the gist, and then we can have a meeting during the week when it's not like late at night, and you can present it, and then
okay.
we can take clips of that and put it in next week's show, or you can however you want to do it. But just give us the gist so we understand what we want to click on it.
Okay, well, so basically, my thought process started with the Kissinger quote that who controls the food supply controls the people, who controls the energy can control whole continents, and who controls money can control the world. And and so I basically just address the ways that we're going to have to take a look in the mirror here and see how individually we have each contributed to making these giants what they are, right? And I briefly just I cover the first thing. I cover some suggestions about food, I cover some suggestions about energy, and those take up maybe 2 pages. The rest of it is basically just opening up some options that we have with like cryptocurrency, and things like honestly, people have preached for ages, be the change you want in the world, right? And we have that opportunity, and if we can because there are some brand new exits, and if we can take advantage of those exits, I mean, they're there and they're forming, but because they're trying to just have just the monopolies. They're trying to kill small businesses, right? And every time, and Jesus, I've ordered from Amazon for years, and I call it their smirking box, and with every order, I help to kill the small businesses, and I help to make the controlling, censoring, oppressive giants bigger. And so I lay out like 5 corporations that I think that we should avoid, right? And I give some some links to some things that you can do. I give links onto all the Google products, all the Amazon products, all the Microsoft products, and I forget which of those, but anyway, Twitch is one of those products. And so I just like everybody to take a look at the information that's in there, because basically I think that if we just spread this, if everybody that hears this just spreads this to everybody that's wondering what can we do, if we just start pulling our energy and support from all these guys, and we can, I think we can make a hell of an impact within the next 60 days. I think we can make our own agenda. And then the other thing, and I'm going to wind up with it, and there's a picture in there, but I took the V for Vendetta mask, and because that's, I think we all are familiar with that symbol, and again, one of the things that he encourages, somewhat, is that we look in the mirror to find how we've contributed to the problems, right? And so I cover, things like, people that work at Walmart, they work full time, and yet taxpayers have to help them pay their rent, pay for their food. And we've got people in China making, all these technological gadgets, and they their life is so hopeless, and they jump out the windows. But hey, there's a net there, and so we can have you back to work right away, after the beating, and so I mean, we're supporting those companies, and these are not easy things to face. But anyway, lastly, these guys are always pirating things. They're always hijacking things. And so I had a thought that came to me last night, because, they're cracking down with all this mass stuff again. They've put up big signs and all that. And so it just occurred to me that if everyone, if everyone Jesus, hang on. Give me just a second. So if everyone deleted, unsubscribed, and canceled, right? Everyone that's done the things the things that I'm begging everybody to do as soon as possible. Once you've done those things, put the letters DUC duck on your mask. And so obviously the more ducks we see on the mask, the more we can gauge, how necessary it really is to wear masks. If you look around and everybody's got the duck mask on, right? But I mean, and you can take that opportunity, because I'd like to see, this just distributed to the point to where anybody that wants to share this could share this through their phone with a QR code that would, hopefully a lot of content creators will post this too. But, I think that, this is a chance for us as individuals, to come together and stop this stuff, because we've got to figure out what we're doing that contributes and figure out another way. Because if we don't stop some of these things by this time next year, we won't be crying about our Amazon thing. So either we'll be a lot better, right? Or Amazon an Amazon subscription won't be an issue. And that's just my perception. And I really appreciate, you're letting me take this opportunity to share this. And I really appreciate all that you guys have done to maintain your platform for all this time. And that's all I have to say.
That is a very cogent and coherent follow-up from last week, and I think those are very reasonable observations to put out there and get refinement for. And delete, unsubscribe, and what was the last one? Cancel.
Cancel. Yeah, duck. Duck.
That's good. I think you got something there, and it's now, or you can wait till they just take everything. So like you can do something now, or you could just wait till they take everything. It's up to people, but I like to give them a chance ahead of time before. It's like, because you see these things coming, they're writing about it. They're doing this. They're doing it.
Exactly. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you all so much for being there and doing what you do. It's important work. It's important work.
Thank you, Darby. Stowe is showing up and doing stuff in between episodes and looking things up and coming to the meeting with some ideas about solutions. That's also a very excellent quality that you have added to this episode. Tyler and Lawrence, you guys have been running the control room out there. You guys have any closing thoughts, things we didn't get to that need to be shared, pieces of evidence that might have been looked up and we didn't talk about them yet? What do you got?
I just wanted to point out my Crime Stop badge. No.
Yeah, what is that? Tell us about that.
I was going to call myself, Thought Police or something tonight, but I was moonlighting over the week, just correcting some historically faulty tweets out there. William Wallace. I don't know if you see this meme floating around. Sorry, I got a little close.
I saw one about the Titanic. The Titanic's I think there's ice ahead, and then there's a little caveat says how icebergs can be good for the Titanic or something like that.
Yeah.
Just a little helpful blurb that they're putting out there. I see.
There you
I
go.
gotcha.
Worried about potential ice. There you go.
Now, is the Titanic still around? Does it float? What would Leslie Stahl say about it?
Oh, well, I mean, there's that sister ship, right? But she'd...
No.
Oh, she'd say no to that? All right, good. Yeah. The Titanic, if we're going to talk about it for a second, is one of three ships. There's the Olympic, the Britannic, and the Titanic. They're basically triplets, and a couple of those ships might still be around. There's interesting history there. I also wanted to thank the Leslie Stahl playback button. That's going to be very useful when we come to points of resistance, where we can just say, Leslie, what should we do about this? What should we say?
No,
Leslie.
come on.
Of course he is. It's
No.
all over the
No.
No. It's not. That's not the case.
Boy, that is hard to watch. That is infuriating.
No. No. That's wishful thinking at its best. Any other closing thoughts? What do you got, Tyler?
Just thanks to the people watching us on Twitch tonight. You know, I like the fact that we're going to be able to grow that platform. And you can hop into the Grand Theft World Discord server. And if you're like, how do I do that? Message somebody, message Rich or me. And if you're not like clear on how to do those things, follow the links down in the chat. And just as well, there's an ongoing discussion. And so I'd like to promote the open source education, open source research model to this podcast. We don't have to just always just share clips. We're using that as a structure to kind of go through. There'll be different types of episodes coming up where we'll have on special guests or people that can go into more depth on these things or people that are better at holding court in a round table. And so the clips are just kind of getting us going here. We're getting like the steam rolling on this thing, but there'll be like Matthew's homework that was covered or Lawrence's ministry of truth there is what I guess we'll refer to him as. Instead of a fact checker, we can bring on them and do, you know, what's needed to be done to source out some of this stuff. So we're kind of covering a lot of ground. There's a lot of assumptions being made about what the audience might understand or might not understand. There's people throwing tomatoes. This is bullshit. Why is Richard doing this? I want him to go back to the peace revolution or what, you know. And so just give us time to kind of get our steam going here. And I appreciate everybody watching. And Richard, I really appreciate you putting your best foot forward here for us and giving us your excellent information that we can then riff on and have a community discussion on. This is awesome.
And also, like, the reason we have the clips is because Grand Theft World is there to purvey the content that's getting censored. So we're kind of just pointing it out. But yes, there's a lot of other things we can work into this, and there's other things we can do from this platform. But it's just important to get it established and to support liberty. If you saw a producer, a content producer who does their own investigative research, and they were featured in tonight's episode, go ahead and go support them. Go check them out. Maybe subscribe to them, maybe follow them, whatever. Start to take in some more information from a different perspective and see how it jives with what you think you have going on so far, and vote with your dollars. I got this hat at wearechange.org in their store. It's supposed to be funny for people who are literate and have a sense of humor. Otherwise, it just bounces off. I didn't get the red hat because I don't want to get beaten, so I got it in blue, and it seems to be a safe color. It's like Bloods versus Crips out there. So I don't know. Is this a safe color? I just figured I don't want to get whacked in the head because it's not a hard hat. It's made out of like some sort of wool or something like that. It's very nice material. All right. So I want to thank you guys all for tuning in and not dropping out. We will be back here next Sunday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time. We will have a completely different setup because the world's going to change a lot in the next week. And it's these things go by pretty fast. And if you don't stop to take a look around every now and then, you might just miss it. Talk to you guys next week. Thank you. Watch the replay. Thank you guys on Twitch too. That's why I put the hat on. I got some people out there on Twitch. That's cool. I wanted to show you guys some love. We'll put the hat on when we get the Twitch audience built. That's like a reward for the evening. Till then, thank you guys all. Peace.